And it says that we are live on YouTube. Board President Golick, the October board meeting is yours to run. Let's roll.
Okay, thanks a lot. So we are holding this meeting via Teams and YouTube. This is done by Executive Order N29-20 I can't talk tonight, which authorizes local legislative bodies to hold public meetings via teleconference and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public. Members of the public are encouraged to observe and participate in the meeting. Further instructions can be found at the bottom of the agenda, but essentially send any comments to admin@westlakecharter.com. Put the item to which you want to comment on in the subject line and try to limit that to 250 words, and we'll check that throughout the evening. With that, Amy, will you please take roll to establish the quorum?
Absolutely. Hope.
Here.
Sean.
Here.
Nancy. Josh.
Here.
Michelle.
Here.
Wasta.
Here.
Ashley.
Here.
Shannon.
Here.
And Jed.
Here.
Okay. Thank you. That brings us to celebrations. Tonight, I would like to celebrate Nancy Con-Vasquez, who's not here to hear it. But she and her husband are celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary today. And I just think it's super awesome, and I'm glad that they are taking time to celebrate it together. With that, I will go in alphabetical order, so I apologize, which means, Amy, I'm starting with you if you want to play, and then cutting to Amber if Amber wants to play.
I will celebrate the fact that I learned this morning that I have been at Westlake Charter for 13 years. It was mind-blowing when that happened this morning. I know I've been here for what has been my almost entire adult life and seen my kids grow and some of your kids grow and move on. But to actually have a number attached to it, it was just really cool. Like, I just was like, yeah, I've been here for 13 years. These are my peeps. So shout out for 13 years of family fun at Westlake Charter.
Well, you're a teenager now. So with that comes, some fun times. But I'm sure we'll be here to help you through it.
Thanks. I feel so great.
Yeah. Amber. And then Ashley.
I just want to celebrate the coffee talk that was a couple days ago. I think it was awesome. We had a lot of great topics. And as we kind of discussed in the podcast today, it's great to have the coffee talk and then this meeting accessible to so many more people. And so I just want to applaud everyone for making it so accessible. And hopefully we continue this. So thank you.
I know it really is the silver lining to COVID is the fact that we've come up with a much more access to what we're doing and what all our governments are doing. Ashley, then Jed.
I'm going to celebrate all of our teachers. I got to sit in on a couple of planning meetings this week. I sat with a group of middle school teachers kind of taking moving forward and different processes, and then sat in a group of K through 8. There was one of us from each grade, and just really, I think I jam with my team a lot, and I don't get to get out, and in this world, I don't even get to see them. And so this week, I have been reinvigorated and reminded of just like how smart and thoughtful our teachers are, and just how lucky we are. So,
thanks, Ashley. Jed, and then John.
So I guess this is not a celebration. This is why I celebrate Amy's 13 years because it's making me think of my own, and I've just done the counting and all that kind of stuff. I was like, okay, wait a second. I know exactly. Quentin was a kindergartner, and the kid's in 10th grade right now. So 11 years. So 2 years behind you, Amy, but more than a decade of a lot of fun working together. So that's cool.
I know, I did the same when I saw that, Jed, and I hit a decade this coming April, and a decade feels forever and then like a blink. John and then Josh.
Hey, I just want to celebrate. Amber mentioned that we did a podcast this morning, and we had our very own board president, Hope Gollig, on the pod today, and it was a ton of fun to have. I mean, Amber and Mrs. Caillou and I always have just a blast on the podcast, and it was just fun to have Hope on there too. We all just kind of jammed. It's one of the things I love about Westlake is we get a lot of great business done, but we have fun doing it, and today was a lot of fun jamming with you guys.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be back soon. That new technology is another way that we've, improved the systems to have us all on from our own homes. It was just really cool. Josh and then Michelle.
Well, I'm just going to celebrate Westlake. We're doing so much inside. We're doing so much with each other in our own house. Even just today, going to pick up new materials for a 6th grade student, just to drive into Westlake, see all the cars in the parking lot, seeing some other people buzzing around. It looks like the streets are getting repaved or getting repainted. So it's looking good. But I just like to be able to go into Westlake and know there's always people there. There's always something going on. Even though we're all working from home and distance learning, John, you and your team are always there. And that always makes me smile.
Thanks, Josh. Michelle, and then Shannon.
So I want to celebrate the Westlake way of distance learning. I think it's crazy times and things are constantly changing, but I get to talk to a lot of different parents from around the state and from throughout Sacramento. And our Westlake parents that I'm in touch with are really pleased with how distance learning is going, and we feel like our kids are still getting, class time and engagement with their peers, which has been really helpful. And it, sometimes it takes you also like listening to others outside of Westlake to see what value we're really getting through distance learning. And so I just want to celebrate the great work that the teachers and the staff are doing, because I will say, I won't tell the other stories, but what I will say is Westlake's distance learning is beyond up to par. So great job.
Thanks, Michelle. Shannon, and then Sean.
So I want to celebrate living in a state and a county that make it pretty easy to vote, because I was able to get out from like a normal, just like, it was like, I have to get out, I have to go on a quick bike ride, I haven't moved in a few hours, and I was like, I can just go vote right now and drop off my ballot. This is so easy. There's so many close polling or drop box locations, and it's only October whatever, and so I want to celebrate how easy that was. And then also, just a quick one similar to Michelle is that I have a colleague who is a new Westlake parent this year, starting during the pandemic. And so it's been fun to hear reports and like good feedback so far. So I like now that I have someone who we previously only knew each other in a professional capacity. Now they're like, hey, so Westlake. So it's fun to be able to talk.
Thanks, Shannon. Sean, and then Steve.
So I'd like to celebrate the finance team. It's always such a great meeting, and it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's super duper our cup of tea. And we always get a lot done and somehow make what should be a really boring subject really interesting.
That's right.
And one of these days, we might actually be able to do it in 60 minutes, though I won't hold my breath on that. Amy, did you see Josh's note? He's having some technical difficulties, so he's going to jump off and back on. Okay. So Steve and then Vasa.
I think I'm going to celebrate the distance learning kits. This is a concept we had, weeks ago about how we can get materials out to students, and then our MTSS student support services team jumped onto it. And I just heard Jeanette Mixits, one of our middle school teachers, sending biology projects home through it. We've got literature going home and archaeological digs going home through it. They've really kind of evolved into this really cool connection with students. And again, I think to Josh's point, families still get to come to school and pick them up. And so I think it's just been a really awesome thing that the instructional team has developed.
Thanks, Steve. Vasa.
Well, there's a ton to celebrate at Westlake Charter School and in our community. I was actually going to celebrate Josh Always Back. I have nearly taught every single person's kid in this Google Meet right now. Very close, and I currently have the privilege of teaching Stella Carell right now, and she is right now she's doing a fashion project for this Genius Hour thing we're doing. She's so excited about it. And, I just think, she's one example of many Westlake Charter students who diligently shows up every single day, works to the best of their ability, tries to overcome obstacles and barriers that present themselves by learning how to use the resources and communicating in this digital space. And apparently she's going to design some fashion on the side. So she's crushing it. And that's it. That's my celebration.
Thanks, Vasa. So that brings us to board comments. Those comments are about items that are on the agenda that are general in nature. Do any board members have any comments they wish to make? Seeing none, I'll just echo Shannon's celebration. There are so many different ways to vote this election cycle. And so if you need any help, be sure to reach out. The Sac County elections and the Natomas Buzz have been really helpful to me in sorting out different issues. And so we just have a lot of resources. So you just never know. Look in the Natomas community. People are wanting to really help. So that brings us to public comments. John, have we received any public comments?
No, I'm looking at admin at Westlake Charter. Oh, look at that one just came in. Amazing timing. Yes, we do have one. I've been staring at it. There's been none, and it just refreshed. Let's take a look.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. We'll read this comment into the record. It is from Carissa Richards Johnson, and it reads, Westlake has been clearly and consistently communicating with families about all that must be considered before making a decision about a return to school date. I feel that families are well informed, more so than some families at other schools or districts. Westlake's decisions make sense. We all want to be back on campus, of course, but we want to be on campus safely too. Thanks to the board and staff for your transparent and thoughtful leadership. Signed, Carissa Richards Johnson. And I'll forward that to you, Amy Wells. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your comment.
That's fine. I knew we had to have one. I was counting on her.
Great timing. It was great timing.
I love that she sent them every time. She's so amazing.
We love it. I'm just gonna check the inbox as I'm going back to the inbox here just to make sure that no one else is populating in. And I think we are good.
Okay, and we can always, if something comes in, we can always talk about it later too, since we'll be checking it throughout the night. That brings us to reports and Amber.
Hi. So I think one cool thing that has been echoed over the last week, and it started at our WAVE meeting, and then it has kind of gone on to the coffee talk and other things, what Ms. Johnson just said, is that everybody's very appreciative that Westlake is taking their time, considering everything, and not rushing into opening up immediately. So I think that's been a really common echo that I've heard over the last couple of weeks. And then we did have our second virtual WAVE meeting. It went really well. We had several parents come. There was a lot of great discussions about our finances, because when we don't have fundraising going on, it does affect our finances. And it turned into a good talk about what we do with the money and how we, I work with Steve and we come up with a budget. And there's just all these things that was a good talk. And it was good for parents who haven't been at Westlake to hear that. And so that leads me right into Olympic Triathlon. We are launching that this Sunday. And we're really excited to do it virtually. The event day will be November 13th, which is Friday the 13th. And this is the 13th annual Olympic Triathlon. So it's just perfect. And so our three specialty teachers have just been amazing, jumping on board and guiding us and helping us plan this event when they already are, helping 1,000 students right now. So just, we really appreciate them. So we're excited to get that information out and to launch it and to raise some money for Westlake, because we know we need it. And Spirit Wear, the store closes this Monday, so if you need anything, be sure to jump on there. And so we've had lots of orders, and it's just nice to be able to offer that to people, and it ships directly to their home. And so that's just a nice thing to have during this time. We did talk about virtual community events, so we will probably have a couple of them coming up where we'll probably do a trivia night, maybe some other nights that we're coming up with. And so we hope to try to really engage the community virtually right now. And then we are also planning a staff appreciation event and it's going to be, distanced, but it's going to be a staff appreciation event for the end of the trimester. So I'm working with our administration team to get that going, because parents really feel that calling to show our appreciation during this time of, so much that our teachers are doing, and we just want to make sure they know we appreciate them. So that's all I have for tonight. I will be getting a check to Steve. I don't have it with me right now, but I will be giving him a check soon. So things are good.
Okay, well, it would have been fun to have a check on both sides and done a fun pass-through, but I'll give you a pass for tonight. That's something to work on for later. I think,
Next time.
Just real quick, Amber, I so appreciate you continuing to lead the Olympic triathlon. Personally, and I already shared this with John earlier, it is super weird not to be sending up my website this year. It's an event I've always volunteered at and truly treasured during my time at Westlake. So to see it launched in this time is amazing to me, and I just so appreciate you and your team that are making it happen. So thank you very, very, very much. The school, we count on you, and this is just awesome. So thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Shannon and the Charter Impact Report.
Yeah, so this month we continued our discussion on kind of the reflection of the equity readings and anti-racism readings and various other listenings, watchings, things that we've been doing. And John reported back kind of on initial steps that he's taking with staff and just, helping us to kind of figure out what our baseline needs to be, because we know there's a lot of variability in people's knowledge and vocabulary and comfort level with having these types of discussions. And so what, kind of fleshing out what the impact committee and then the board's role is in facilitating these discussions and leading these discussions. And so we are moving this month into setting our committee goals and kind of getting deeper into some of the data on kind of how we're doing compared to other schools in the area and across the state, and just looking at how we can update our committee goals to incorporate more of the anti-racism and equity goals that we have, and figure out then how we move forward, name what we're doing and name our process, because I think we're still in this like squishy bubble land, and so we want to get that a little clearer before we come to this group and then eventually to the staff teams with a more concrete plan and something to respond to. So I think that's it.
Thanks, Shannon. It also feels like a great time to plug our committees for those who are out watching this meeting tonight. If after you hear these reports and you're interested in participating and coming and joining in on any of these meetings, we certainly welcome you to come and participate. The more voices we have as we go through the different work of the committees, the more valuable I think it will be. So I just wanted to, get a plug out there, since we do luckily have new people watching, hopefully. With that brings us to the Development Committee Report. And I believe, Josh, you've been charged with that tonight, right?
I have been charged with it. So here we go. So we met, let's see. We always meet the Monday after the board meeting, correct, Hope? So we met about a month ago. We've got our next meeting coming up on Monday. At our last meeting, we kind of had a little bit of an awakening and we are realigning ourselves a little bit, as opposed to just trying to set a dollar goal. So we talked about setting a dollar goal. How much money do we want to raise? But we ended up coming up with, and John, I don't know if you want to speak about what we're looking at, because we're looking at funding an initiative that aligns with a lot of the social justice work that the Impact and Governance Committee has been working on. So we're looking to kind of create an experience or an opportunity for the explorers through the Development Committee. And that would be something, that they would get, for example, every ninth grader gets to go on a trip. And, we're looking at some ideas. John, did you want to jump in on some of our ideas?
Well, just the ideas that we were kicking around were, for example, in our pathway to graduating the 12th grade, we think it's a logical first step for every 9th grader to take a field lesson down to the Tolerance Museum in Los Angeles and then do a little college tour while we're down there. And we did a little snooping around. We realized for $17,500 of corporate sponsorship or development engagement, we could sponsor every child in the 9th grade to go. And if that were something that we could establish that was repetitive every year with a couple of our Explorer partners, then what a great gift that would be to our pathway to 12th grade. So it's just one of many ideas, but we felt like it was a reasonable amount of money to go after and certainly a just cause.
Yep, so we worked on that, kind of refocusing our alignment a little bit, and because of that, it works right in with working on our goals. So that's kind of our view now. Instead of saying, we want to raise some money to help with school events, we're talking about we want to raise money to send our explorers on an experience, give them something, to help them as they enter the world. So that's what we're looking to do, and we don't want to just say we're going to raise $25,000. That's where we wanted a specific event that has a specific outcome for the kids. And that's our update.
Great job.
Thanks, Josh. Great update, by the way. I'll tell Nancy you filled in very well. Sean.
Okay, so finance met, and we got our usual monthly update from Steve, and then we went into closed session. So that's all I can say about that. There was no report out. That was our meeting.
Yeah, closed sessions are both awesome and then weird. Governance committee did not meet tonight, so I do not have an update for that committee, which kicks it to you, John, for your executive director's report.
All right. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. We've got what looks like a light agenda, which means we've got a very long board meeting ahead of us. Happens every time. So I will try to work through my slides, but I, as always, included in our show tonight things that I thought were pertinent to this particular time. I would say please interrupt me and get involved in the updates and strategic actions section. As I load this, sometimes my computer gets a little glitchy, so if I'm glitching, give me just a moment to load this up. Of course, we'll start with some celebrations. Can you guys see my slides and hear me okay? All right, good. Hey, the drive-through picture day is really an example of when we demonstrate what's possible. Like, not everybody did this. So if you saw this and you thought, oh, well, it's just, schools doing what schools do. I don't know many schools that did this. And thanks to Melissa Gruenholtz and the whole operations team, this was an all hands on deck. Stacy Ramirez, Tony Ramirez, Monica Darris, the whole team, Carla, they all made this happen, and it was great. Our kids got to step on campus for a moment and get their picture taken. It was glorious. I'd like to celebrate our specialties in distance learning. We're getting so much love and feedback. Our Spanish program is on fire, and it's just Abigail Grimaldi holding it down for 1,000 kids. She is crushing it. Our PE is on point. I just saw art kits going out today. My daughter at home just did some beautiful artwork this last week. Our specialties, my goodness, we're so lucky to have them. So just wanted to celebrate them. Hashtag WCS Spirit Friday Sports Day. I love this, the Spirit Friday. If you zoom in real close, you could see Robin Harold in the bottom right corner with a Robin Harold Jones with a football on her head. She just goes all out for Spirit, man. I love the Spirit Day. So much fun. And this is our first 2 virtual field lessons of the year. Now, we pride ourselves on being explorers and getting out and exploring. Our first graders went to Sutter's Fort virtually. Now that's Mr. Jones, who is Robin Harold Jones's husband, and he is the tour guide at Sutter's Fort. So our first graders went to Sutter's Fort as part of their, what's the name of that unit, you guys? Things on the Go unit? Anyway, one of their units of study. And then a touch of understanding, which is our disability awareness field lesson that typically comes on campus, and our students get to experience a day in the life of someone with a physical or capacity disability. And we did it virtually this year. We were so grateful that A Touch of Understanding was able to do this virtually. So it's such a great celebration there. I think the last one is really Emily Batten, who's going to come out and do a presentation for you after me tonight. And the videos, if you haven't had a chance to look at them yet, are coming together. Our video series, I think, has 3 videos launched. There's another one coming out this weekend. But you can go to bit.ly/WCHS videos, just like it says on the screen there. And on that little website, see all the little high school videos. And boy, it's really fun to talk about something that's going to be so amazing. This high school is coming together so spectacularly, and it's such an extension of what we believe and what we do here. So it's just a joy to put these things together. And Batten, I know you guys only get to see her a couple moments a month here, but I get to see her every day. And her and Leslie Sargent are crushing it on the development of your high school. You're going to be so proud of this work. Let's dive into some updates and then some strategic actions and then some reopening talk. I'm going to talk a little gratitude, MacBook refresh, distance learning updates, small stable cohorts. We're going to talk some other supports available, FUA update, and dashboard. So, look at Patel. That's your class right there. They're so cute. Gratitude. Hey, I just want to thank our board, Westlake Charter School Board of Directors. We just sent out our certificated staff their fall bonus. And it's the 3rd year of a 3-year bonus. And I can't tell you enough how grateful all of our staff are to you as a board for recognizing the important work that they do and compensating them appropriately. This bonus comes at a wonderful time, always in the fall. But this fall in particular, I think it was well received because I've never seen a group of people working harder than the people that are working here today. And so having a little bonus during an October break, I think felt great. So thank you, board, for that piece there. I told you that during our COVID-19 plan, when you gave me the authority to execute on expenditures that we felt were appropriate, that I would come back and report any expenditures above my typical limit. And we were going to refresh the MacBook Airs this year. And I was going to wait till the board meeting tonight and authorize it, but we just went ahead and got a jump start on it so we can get them in. The Google Meets, the distance learning, it puts a little bit of a toll on these MacBooks. And any of the MacBooks that are older, especially the ones that are older than 2017, they're really kind of struggling. So we just pulled the trigger. It was money we were going to spend anyway. That was already in the budget. We went ahead and refreshed those, and those came in over October break. We're going to start distributing them to teachers. So nobody on staff will have a MacBook older than 2019. So we'll be, as long as this distance learning continues to be a part of what we're doing, we need our staff to have quality technology. Distance learning update. I just want to start with our staff are incredibly committed, talented, inspiring, and they're really to be commended. I think Mrs. Gibbons said so, and I think Shannon echoed it. I think we're doing unusually well, and I don't think that's boastful. I just think our teachers are really incredible during normal times and during this crisis. They have responded accordingly. They're exhausted, and if you see them in the grocery store, be nice to them. They deserve some love. We're showing progress in distance learning. Not only is distance learning iteratively getting better week after week, but we're also seeing progress of student learning, and that's important for us because that's what we're here to do. Benchmarks are happening at every grade level, and report cards are coming together for the end of the trimester. Now, it's not the exact same amount of benchmarks. It's not the same report card robustly that you would fill out. And I'll admit, honestly, that we do have evidence that, hey, learning has slowed compared to previous years as we expected. I think we all came into this expecting learning to be slower than normal years. However, we are getting some reportings from several grade levels that are like, hey, it's not as slow as we thought it would be. And unfortunately, though, for our staff who are so alpha committed to our community, that anything less than perfection is a thorn in their side. And so a lot of our teachers are beating themselves up. And I just want to say publicly, they're doing a great job. We are experiencing some learning loss, and we are iteratively working toward how to mitigate that, not only this year, but there's already some planning going on for next year. So I just want to report that to our board. I wanted you to know I think we're doing a great job, but the reality is distance learning is not the same as a traditional school year. when we're all together. I know I'm racing through, but give me a little wave if you want to chime in on any of these pieces. I'll certainly stop for you. Otherwise, I'll just keep barreling. We've engaged in the small, stable cohort supports, and we started, as I reported before, with at the top of our pyramid, our highest need students. And currently, we have students who are served who are our highest need, and they're getting regular in-person instruction and support with instruction from their teacher. Our service providers include Westlake Charter School staff, as well as outside your non-Westlake Charter School staff, like our speech therapist, music therapy, adaptive PE specialist, occupational therapy. So those service providers are helping as well. I got to tell you, as an iterative step toward reopening, this one brings many of our hearts maybe the most joy. These children really needed our support and are getting it. What we are doing now in our next iteration is we're exploring the next tier of possibilities. Okay, our highest need students are getting support, but if we're in distance learning for another 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever that looks like, or even as we go to the baseline model that's kind of hybrid, what type of supports can we do in these small, stable cohorts? And remember, they're small, they're stable to decrease the likelihood of transmission of COVID, but we're bringing people on for extra support. So our student support services team, led by Christina Ike, also on that team, Whitney O'Hagan, Sabrina Jackson, they are working right now to deliver a plan to the admin team of what does it look like next to bring on students who are, needing supports or struggling currently with distance learning. So while we're not 100% clear about what the reopening fully looks like, on our way to that, we're still working hard to make sure that the students get what they need right now. Other supports available, I want to chime in on these pieces because I think there's some neat things happening. Currently, we have many of our teachers are using breakout rooms with the teacher. So a teacher can say, hey, meet me in this breakout room, and a teacher will go to a one-on-one with a student while the teacher has two computers open and can still see their whole class over here, but can have a one-on-one conversation with a kiddo over here. They also have instructional aides who are sitting in a centralized breakout room where kids can get support during the day. So, we've really iteratively found ways to provide support during the school day. We also have after-school office hours. This is not just for the students, but for parents as well. Parents are getting a lot of one-on-one support with the teacher during this carved out time that's especially there for just that. But this next piece, the virtual learning lab, is getting some traction, and it's really targeting support in a neat way. So our learning lab on campus typically gets kids who go in for help and support, but now we get the virtual learning lab open, and it's a lot of fun, and it's at multiple, it's across all the grade levels. So that's definitely a great piece right there. And then I just want to, recognize that BASE as a support is still being offered to any family that needs it, and we still have not reached capacity. So we still have scholarships available, partial scholarships available. We still have seats available. And so I'm really proud of the work we did. If you think back a couple of months, how hard we all worked to get BASE up and running and making sure it was available. Well, that thing is still available today as a support. And we have kids every single day in BASE, engaged in distance learning, getting what they need. So we're really proud of that work. So next is ROAR. Remember ROAR? This is where we do targeted intervention for kids typically before the school day. It's an outside intervention piece. Well, we're getting ready to launch ROAR right now based on the end of trimester 1 data. And our instructional aides who typically run ROAR and use some reading curriculum in ROAR, they just had some training this week. They're very excited about it, and that's going to be launching, and that's going to help, again, another support to help our kids get what they need to mitigate learning loss and, to keep everyone moving forward. Two more updates. One is that the California School Dashboard is going to get updated next month. It's just going to have descriptive data. It's not going to have any achievement data. I think even the EL data that was, remember we were waiting on the third year of data. Looks like that's going to close. We'll know more next month, but I wanted you to know that this dashboard is going to stay open. But it's going to be much less robust than it was in previous years. we've been told by the California Department of Education that we don't need to update our narrative metrics, the local indicators. As you recall, this month, every year, we approve that at the board level. We don't have to do that this year. So just want to let you know that that dashboard is going to be updated. And this is a big deal for us as we're building the high school, the facilities use agreement. You know, we had hoped to have a facilities use agreement in front of you tonight in the October meeting. I am now coming back and telling you I'm hoping to have one in front of you in the November meeting. We are continuing to work with our partners at Natomas Unified School District toward a facilities use agreement. And, we're really seeking short-term and long-term solutions in that facilities use agreement. And because, there's a lot going on in the world today and everyone's busy, and because there's certainly a negotiation on the table as to what we should all agree upon, we're kind of log jammed up right now. And so we're not at a place where we have an agreement. And so we're going to keep working toward that agreement. I'm looking for a potential of escalating to, speaking directly with maybe the superintendent regarding what next steps look like, because I've been working with the liaison on that. So we'll try and bring something back again next month. We do have a somewhat of agreement on the short-term side. It's just the long-term side we seem to kind of log jammed up on.
Hey, John,
Yeah.
Real fast. How long is this agreement for again?
Yeah, so that's kind of the hinge point of the whole deal, Hope, is that these are 5-year agreements, and our short-term solution that we've discussed with the Natomas Unified School District is a temporary facility that will be big enough for us for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years, but we don't think we'll fit in there 9th through 12th grade. So I'm feeling very uncomfortable signing a 5-year facility use agreement that's only good for 3 years. And so, yeah, does that answer that, Hope?
Yeah, I guess my concern, you still have pieces to play out. I just don't want to miss any other deadlines or things we'd have to do on that long-term plan. I don't know that we're is it Prop 39? I don't know that we're there yet. I just want to make sure that in the log jam, right, that everything moves forward enough where we're still sort of protecting that long-term goal.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I could button up the deal tomorrow on the short term, and we can have the short term solved. But like yourself, I don't want to come back in the short term and then have to go back to the table later. We kind of want to say, hey, this isn't adequate. We did, we do know that Natomas Unified just announced they're going to build a brand new elementary school for $40 million just off of Club Center. We know that NP3's got a $14.4 million improvement coming up for their elementary school. So we know the facilities is still on the table. Paso Verde is a $56 million facility that's coming out of the ground looking beautiful right now. So we know that, there is still work happening in Natomas. We would just like to be a part of that work and a part of what growth looks like in Natomas.
Yeah, for me, it's essential to be able to tell families at least as much as we can as we open the high school about what the short and long-term plan is. So whatever support you need from me on that as this moves forward, just, how to find me. Yeah. I just want to make sure that, that we address our needs for our families.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Thank you. That is the last piece of update. Strategic actions. It's just kind of looking at the board comments, making sure there wasn't one. Strategic actions, I've got a couple that I'm really excited about, and then I'll go into reopening schools. The two that I'm going to discuss tonight are first, talking about our leadership, PBIS, data assessment, our teacher teams here at Westlake Charter School. I just want to shout them out. And I want to talk about reflection, action, transformation a little bit and give you an update on some of the work we're doing that we're very excited about. And so let's dive in here. I just want to say that teamwork at Westlake Charter School, as you all well know, is a big deal to us. Hope, you're always talking about the culture code. Patel and Loktev, you guys know because you're on all these teams, A-Dub. Teamwork's a big deal here, but I just want to kind of point out some numbers a little bit. Our leadership team is now meeting every week, working on reopening instructional plans. They are putting in the work to make sure that what we do next is done well. And there's 16 formal members on that team, but we've had as many as 26 in the room recently. A PBIS team is 8 people who are coming together to design all the safety protocols for arrival, dismissal, moving across campus. You got another 10 people in data assessment who are analyzing scope and sequences to make sure we're hitting the right standards and curricular marks. Even though we know things have slowed down a little bit because of distance learning, the DNA team is starting to figure out, okay, well, what does that mean? If you're going to not catch up on this standard here, what are we going to have to do next year to make sure that learning loss is mitigated? So there's another 10 people right there, 8 people from the tech team supporting teachers with the success of distance learning. When you do the math right there, there's 42 people right there out of only 60 teachers. So 2/3 of all your staff are sitting on really impactful committees at the school. And so when we talk about what makes Westlake so high functioning in a time like this, I think this shared leadership model, having this many voices really driving the work, is incredibly important. I think that our staff do this really well, and I just want to shout them out for it tonight and point that out. This next piece is something I brought up at Coffee Talk, and I decided I was going to do it for the board tonight. I thought, well, maybe I don't have time, and then I thought, that's exactly why this issue doesn't take root, is because there's just never a good time to have awkward conversations. And so I said, hey, I just recently talked to a school leader, a superintendent in the Central Valley, who said, hey, John, if you're going to lead social justice, you're going to mess it up at times, and embrace that and move forward through it because your community deserves it. And it inspired me to say, okay, then we are going to do this iteratively, and I'll do it in front of the board, and I'll do it in front of Coffee Talk, and I love doing it with our staff. We're going to talk about reflection, action, transformation. This is the social justice work that we've been launching since we started this, since we sent this letter regarding George Floyd. You'll recall that as we opened up the school year with the teachers, we highlighted all the verbs in the letter to try to analyze what is it we're supposed to be doing. Such a teacher thing to do, highlight the verbs, right? We came up with all these verbs, and the last 3 verbs were reflection, action, transformation. So for us, we said, we'll just call that our mental model, our framework for all this work. What work are we trying to do? Is it equity? Is it social justice? Put a name on it. And that's Impact's job. But for right now, we've been called to reflection, action, and transformation. So, I wanted to express some of the work we're doing, and then maybe give you just a little sample of a thought process that we're working on with staff. The leadership team, as we kind of discussed earlier, is sitting on many committees, but they have launched a reflection, action, transformation launch prep team, and they've broken up into 3 groups. Group 1 is interviewing facilitators, outside facilitators that come into organizations like ours and do this type of work. Emily Batten is leading that group, and she's narrowed it down from a larger group of interviews. I think we're down to maybe 3 or 4 facilitators. A couple of them are single facilitators. A couple of them are like larger groups, like the Learning Tree or the Learning Solutions group, who does a lot of equity work. Group 2 is interviewing leaders from around the country who have led this work and are a couple years out ahead of us. And after doing these interviews, we're finding that, hey, Westlake is not starting this work. We are where we are. We are in this work, because as you look at your own strategic plan, your own mission statement, the work you're doing already, we're in this work. And so it's really validating to talk to other leaders who are known, who are, keynote speakers at conferences, who lead this work, and they're saying to us, hey, you guys are already on the path. Just keep leaning and keep going. And then we're identifying professional development opportunities and time to do this work. We have a PD coming up, and I'm going to give you a peek behind the curtain of a piece of this PD right now. But this group 3 is looking at not just teachers. They're looking at how can we get training for our board of directors? Should we do implicit bias training? Should we do curricular analysis training? Should we do these types of training that's going to move this work to the center of our conversations? The certificated staff, the classified staff, but also as the conversation has been developing, what about parents, community members, and students? And so we're super excited about this work. Now I'll give you a little peek into some of what this work looks like in a second, but we've kind of asked ourselves, are we just doing this work because it's an extension of the George Floyd letter? And as we look at our own documents, we have our mission statement that says we demonstrate what is possible when school and community collaborate to create inspiring adults with the academic and social emotional readiness to lead as global citizens. And those inspiring adults right there, they are supposed to graduate from high school prepared to lead as global citizens. Okay, what does one thing have to do with the other? What does global citizens have to do with social justice and equity? Well, our strat plan, goal area 5, says right here that we've defined global citizenry as an inspiring adult who embraces equity, inclusivity, diversity, cultural competence. And impact team is starting to look at, maybe we include anti-racism sentiments in there, but already this strat plan says our job is to be doing this work to get our students to graduate ready to lead as these global citizens that we describe. And so I'm excited that this isn't just a single reaction to a horrible event that took place in May. This is work that we said 2 years ago that we'd be working on. And so what might this look like? First of all, there's no one and done with this work. There's no training that's going to make us all better. There's no training even iteratively across the next 5 years where we can be like, oh, good, whoo, we're done. What we're finding out is the organizations that do this well do this forever. That this isn't I'm going to learn to be an anti-racist and now I can go on and learn something else. The organizations that do this well embed this work in everything they do, in board work, in curriculum work, in instructional collaboration. When we look at student data, we look at it through the lens of equity. And so this little exercise here I just want to share with you is a particular reflective exercise that demonstrates a pattern of how you would go from reflection to action. And we're launching this at our next staff PD. So for those of you who are staff, you're getting a little preview. But we're going to read this little 2-page article by Rudine Sims Bishop. And Bishop writes this article. It's a short read. I should have put it in the board packet. I encourage you all to read it. But it's a brilliant way to look at the importance of our libraries. The libraries in our classrooms. Every one of us as a teacher has books in our classroom. We have images on the wall. We have anchor charts. And as we look around the curricular materials in our room through an equity lens, we should recognize, says Bishop, that these books, they act as windows, sliding glass doors, and mirrors. As windows, a child should be able to hold up a book, read that book, and see through that window into the experience of people unlike themselves. And in the most diverse zip code of the nation, in Natomas, our children should walk into a classroom and be able to pick up a multitude of books that shares the experience of those around them. Unfortunately, in America, we know that most books in most American classrooms are written by authors that are not authors of color, and they don't reflect students of color. They're written predominantly by white authors and reflect characters who are white. And so while that may be a mirror for a white student or a window for a student of color, we need that conversation to go the other way. We need our books to be windows into all the diversity that's represented in our classroom. And so it's a great reflective opportunity for staff to look across their library and analyze, hey, do I have enough windows in my library that give access to the rich diversity in our classroom, in our community? The other piece is that a book should be a mirror. It should be a mirror because I should be able to walk into a classroom, read a book, and see myself in the literature and see myself accomplishing the tasks that are defined in that piece of literature so that I know I can become that character. And unfortunately, too few books represent or have characters who are characters that reflect our students of color. And so it's just, again, this really reflective opportunity for us to just, and this is not, again, this work never ends. This is just a granular beginning of like, oh, what an interesting reflective opportunity. So we're going to ask our teachers to read these books. We've asked our parents in the coffee talk, maybe look at your own library at home. We've also said maybe we should set aside some money, which we have done, and we'll be giving our teachers a little stipend. Say, hey, if you recognize that you're missing a window or a mirror in your own library, Let's start to fill those holes. Let's start to recognize maybe this year you have a Chilean student or a Peruvian student in your classroom. And while you have library books that maybe represent Latinos in general, you're missing that real, individual or personalized cultural piece. And so go out and get a book that creates a window for that, for other children and a mirror for that child. We said to our parents, if you want to donate a book to school, donate a book that represents your family, because that gift will give your own child and other children like yours a mirror, and will give all your child's colleagues a window into their experience. And so we're really excited about not just this one little PD, but what this represents, which is our willingness to say, okay, starting now, moving forward, how many ways can we look at equity as we look across all the work we do at Westlake Charter School? So I thought, as a board, I would just inform you tonight of some of the work we're doing. It is not leading to transformation, because it is not one PD. It's no silver bullet, but it is an initial step that's we think is a public way of saying, hey, let's get this work started. Reflection can have impact. Patel?
Maybe the parents took you 100% literal, because I found this book, this blur thing makes it really funky for you to see, on my desk, called You Matter. And if you look at the front cover of it, it has children of all colors, a child in a wheelchair, and it was a gift from a parent when I ran into school to get some things I needed. So they listen.
There you go. There you go. Mrs. Houston, I don't know if you're still here, but yeah, we made a stand. We're like, hey, parents, donate a book. We love books. So anyway, I wanted to report out on that. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns on any of the updates or strategic actions that I shared tonight? Anything? All right. I will make sure, A-Dub, will you make sure that I give everybody the Bishop article? It's a very quick read. It is really good, though, you guys. Shannon, we should take it to Impact. It's a great little piece. Okay, I'll go forward into the discussion item tonight. No, that's not what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to stop. Hey, Hope, I'm done. Back to you.
Thank you. Like my stop sign?
That was great.
The consent agenda is next. It's not particularly long this evening, so this will only be a brief break until you start your discussion item. But we do have 2 items on consent tonight. It's approving the minutes from the September board meeting and approving monetary donations. Just real quick, John, can you check for any public comments on this item?
I'm looking now, and I'll refresh, but I am seeing none.
None. So at this time, I either ask for any fellow board member questions or for a motion to approve the consent items.
I'll move.
Thanks, Ashley. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Michelle. And then, Amy, will you please take the vote?
You'd think after 8 months I'd get the mute button thing under control. No. Hope.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
Josh. I'll come back to Josh.
Yeah, you can come back to him at the end.
Okay, cool. Michelle.
Yes.
Alexa.
Control S does not work. Control D is the trick. Yes.
Ophelia. Ashley.
Yes.
Shannon.
I'm abstaining from the minutes, but yes.
Okay. And Jed.
Yes.
Okay. And then circling back to Josh.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. So after that brief break, John, you're up again.
Sorry, Hope. Yeah, I was charging right through. I thought, oh yeah, I'm up next. I'll just keep going. Whoops, I forgot about consent.
Well, when you were talking, I was thinking, because I was like, oh, how do I send him the bat signal? But then I decided I would just have a moment.
I was like, choo choo, just Yeah, power right through. All right, let me get these slides going. We're going to talk reopening schools. It's not exhaustive presentation, so please scribble down notes, thoughts, hit me as we go, because I want you involved in this conversation. I'm really looking to hear the voice of the board. As you recall, the board has authorized the executive director to make decisions in reopening schools, and so I have not brought to you tonight a plan for you to approve, and I won't be doing that in the November 13th, but I will be looking to hear you as we iteratively make these plans going forward. So I'd love to understand the voice of the board, even though we don't have a vote per se tonight. So please make sure you dive in and are involved in this discussion. So let's dive in here and talk about reopening schools. We sent a letter out to the community in the Westlake Weekly this last week. We checked the metrics on it, and we had about 325 people click on this letter. So we think it got some widespread. I know that Amber Husted put it on the Wave page. Thank you for that. The synopsis of the letter, in case you didn't read it, was that the Sacramento County Public Health and the Sacramento County Office of Education have now reauthorized authorized schools to open with conditions, right? That it is not school as we once knew it, open up the floodgates and everybody runs back to school. It is still 6 feet of social distancing, wearing masks, and all of the precautionary measures that are appropriate. Westlake Charter School is in the process of designing all necessary next steps, and we were clear about that in the letter. We didn't say in the letter, hey, we know exactly what's coming next. We said, hey, we have a lot of work to do because whether you know it or not, the last 8 weeks of school, we've been really busy focusing on making the school awesome. And I think we were pretty transparent about that in the letter, that we're going to iteratively work forward on this. We also introduced in the letter that next levels include reopening campus, but that doesn't look like school as we know it. And I think that's a really important concept for all of us to understand as a group working together. I mean, we went to school in February, and school was school as we've all known it, and it was awesome. In March, we had a crisis, and we shut down. We did distance learning. We came back in September, and we started distance learning. And distance learning's really evolved in the last 8 weeks. And I think we got a great version of distance learning. But this is the new normal. If you're an 8-year-old, this is kind of how school's operated now for 8 weeks. And psychologically, this is the rhythm you're in. So if we were going to go back to school and it looked like February, I think that would be one mental shift or change to manage, but that's not where we're going. We're not going back to school in February. We're going to do something we've never done. This hybrid, it's your turn to go to school. Now it's your turn to go to school. When I'm not at school, what does school look like? Oh, I'm on the computer. Oh, this next thing looks very different than school. And so I just want to be careful when we say reopening schools. We're reopening campus and we're reinventing school, but we need to be clear that this is going to be a disruption to what's normal now and a disruption to what it looked like previously. And I try to say that in the letter gently, like, hey, be warned, it's going to look different. We also said in the letter that we're going to stay with distance learning for those reasons, because of the massive disruption that we anticipate. We're going to stay with distance learning through the end of the trimester, which takes us out to November 13th, and then the next checkpoint will be November 15th for communications, which means we wouldn't be able to reopen school until at least November 30th, and we'll talk about that in the timeline section later. We also articulated some of the work that needs to be done between now and reopening. And so a quick review of the data, right? We've been tracking the county data. As you can see, these are our charts based on the epidemiology data that came from the county every single day. And so we've been watching the COVID case count in Sacramento County trend down since September 20th. We've had 3 full weeks of being in red, substantial, by the county data. Per the state data, we've actually got 4 weeks, I believe. So the state was a week ahead of the county on their data. And so I did want to take a look at the data a different way, because I always think that like how you look at the data matters. And so this spreadsheet column right here you'll see is our spreadsheet where we've just taken the data from the epidemiology website. And you'll note that in the past 31 days, So September 10th to October 10th, that's the most recent data, is up to the 10th. We've had 10 days of widespread, meaning more than 105 cases per day, 12 days of the substantial range, and 9 days of the moderate range. That means that the 31-day average is 6.8 per 100,000. Well, remember, the threshold for widespread is 7, and we're right there at 6.8. That's a 31-day average. I know that our current weekly average is like down 4.3. I just show you that because 30 days prior to that, the Sacramento average was 11.3. So what that tells me is over a period of a month, a lot can change. And I want us to recognize that because later you're going to hear me say the county, Sacramento County Public Health has been very clear with school leaders. As we come back to school, we are expected to adopt a new normal ideology or mentality that says we can expect classrooms, cohorts, and grade levels to be closing and reopening and quarantining because things change over time and we can't tell what's going to happen next. And so, you know, as Mrs. Johnson said in her board comment, we are moving into this slowly and purposefully because we know that things outside of our control are going to influence how we experience school. The status on the California blueprint for a safer economy is we are currently in red status, and we might be on our way to orange, which should be, I feel better about opening in orange than in red, but we were previously widespread purple. Is there any questions on the data? Because clearly I love it. No? All right, I'll go away from the data. I'm so into the data. So look, our next checkpoint for communications is November 15th. Now, we may communicate some information earlier than that, and you'll hear me talk about November 1st as a early communications, but the full communications presentation that's going to go out to our parents is on the November 15th Westlake Weekly. That's after our next board meeting. And you remember this 40-page Return to School Fall 2020 Family Handbook. This is the document that we're updating and reinventing. In the next 30 days, we got a lot of work to do. We'll be continuing distance learning. We'll be collaborating with our board, our community, our partners in the region, NUSD, Natoma Charter, MP3, Sac County, and Sac County Office of Education and Public Health. So lots of collaboration between here and there. We're going to update, at the very least inside this handbook, all of our instructional models, all of our schedules are going to be reiterated. All the information that families need to know exactly what it looks like to come back to school. We want that to be extremely clear. So we're not going to rush. We're going to make sure we cross our T's and dot our I's because there's nothing worse than not knowing. And I get people want the information now, but I would rather give them the information then and have it be really crystal clear and well put together. We're also going to be updating in here some of the support models that I discussed earlier that are going to be available both in distance learning and in whatever comes next, baseline and orientation and increased capacity. And then we're going to, inside this manual, curate all of our training materials, including videos and PDFs and documents for students and families so that they can engage in learning how to return to school safely. We want everyone to have the materials. Now, our teachers are also going to facilitate using those training materials, training our kids, but we want families to have access to that. So lots of work to do between now and then. So this slide here talks about what level we're heading into. We're heading into out of level 1 and into like level 2 or level 3. Now highlight this because these are the levels that really give us trouble. Level 4, increased capacity. If I told Mrs. Patel, hey, your 19 kiddos are going to come back 5 days a week, and a few of them are going to stay home on distance learning, then Mrs. Patel has 2 groups, her in-class kids and her at-home kids, and Mrs. Patel is managing 2 groups, which is 2 full-time jobs for a teacher, but that's increased capacity. What we're walking into is this hybrid model where Mrs. Patel has a group A on Monday and Tuesday, and group B on Wednesday and Thursday, but there's also that group C, those distance learning kids who never come to school, and Mrs. Patel is now managing 3 groups. Well, anybody who tells you that's an easy job has clearly never been a teacher, and so I'm listening to our teachers. We're really making sure that we focus on how to do this well, because this is the hard work. As we look at Placer, we talk to our friends in Texas and other places that are doing some hybrid work. This is what's tripping people up. It's not the increased capacity with the masks on. That's hard enough. It's this hybrid model where you have some kids in class and some kids at home. And I'll show you why this is so hard. Remember, the number of students that can safely fit into a classroom determines our schedule. If we could all get in the classroom safely, then we could go to increased capacity, and we're working toward that. But if we're going through the orientation and the baseline, this is what presents the problem. I'll show you some of why. Some of the scheduling assumptions we made back in the summer when we built this original handbook, really interesting to look at. When we built these models, students had not yet been to school, so there was no norms that needed to be unlearned. Our kids have now been in distance learning for 8 weeks. They have changed the way they see school. They can mute their teacher. Their teacher can mute them. They can eat in class and wear their bunny slippers underneath the table, and they don't have to wear a uniform. Like, if we don't think that's kind of a massive stretch of the rubber band change between what we're doing now and what we're doing next, it's just that when we originally designed these models, we were thinking about opening school fresh on day one. Now there's an unlearning process and a re-norming process, and we'll do a great job of it, but it has to be considered. It has to be part of the pedagogical decisions we make, because if you try to throw a teacher into a room managing 10 kids who've never been in school before, kindergartners, and simultaneously at the exact same time trying to manage 10 kids and their 10 parents on the computer, that is not an appropriate dynamic to establish right now, because you have to re-norm the classroom, and those teachers are going to need 100% focus there. It's interesting. Our assumption back then was that if you're in school, you're in school, and if you're at home doing distance learning, when we built this model, we thought distance learning was all asynchronous. Because remember, in the spring, it was like, go watch this video, go do this online assignment. But at that point, we had never delivered live synchronous distance learning. And now we've changed what we believe is true about distance learning, and so it is influencing how this model looks. Again, we thought originally cohort A is going to come to school from 8:30 to like 1:15, and cohort B is going to be at home from 8:30 to 1:15, and they're going to be kind of take care of themselves doing asynchronous. Well, that's not the way it works anymore. If you want to really have live engagement with both of these groups, and you can't do it simultaneously, then you probably have to shorten this school day and shorten this school day and stack them up or do something like that. And that really influences the type of schedule you can build. Now, again, our teachers are working hard on this right now in leadership, and they're coming up with some brilliant models. So the next steps in designing these instructional plans include this. We're designing with our teachers as opposed to for our teachers. And I only say that because we're Westlake, and the reality is I keep seeing other ed leaders out there holding up plans saying, this is what we're doing. And I go, oh, wow, that district's totally got it together. That's what they're doing. Only to find out a week later they're backpedaling in the news going, we didn't really have an agreement with our teachers, and it turned out what we said we were doing, they said was impossible. And now we're all fighting about it. And I'm thinking, well, you should have worked with your teachers in the first place. So at Westlake, we have shared leadership. We are doing this messy work together on the front end, as opposed to me going into my office designing something that'll never work because I'm not qualified. I'm not in the classroom. Our teachers are, and so they're building it. We're going to obviously work towards some real important norms for our families. Anchoring start and end times so that families know that they have a very consistent and trauma-informed opportunity to when do I drop off, when do I pick up, when I'm at home, when does that instruction start, and when does that instruction end. But we are going to note that grade bands and grade levels are going to look differently for the instructional model. Kindergarten needs to be in their classroom with their kids with 100% attention on the kids who are in front of them, because those kids have never been to school before. And so that's what's real. And that could look different at 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade. 8th grade also, though, they have to reestablish in-person norms for 8th graders who haven't been in school since March of their 7th grade. Taking these into consideration, we have to recognize that different grade levels are going to have different instructional practices and protocols, and they're going to be allowed to do that and maybe be allowed to use their day differently. Maybe 8th grade is doing more whole group work, and maybe kindergarten is breaking up in individual one-on-one work when they're doing digital. And if that's what the teachers come up with, as long as it fits within the parameters of, how families can expect a clear and consistent experience, that's what we'll do. So our goal is to have these instructional models and schedule completed by November 1st on the instructional side of the house. On the operations side of the house, same deadline for a bunch of all of our memos and the ops work we're doing. I'll tell you about that next. But then we'll have that on November 1st, so we can polish it up. And by November 12th, when we have a board meeting, all of this will be put together well. I want to just say this out loud because I think it's important that our distance learning that we're experiencing right now, and it was echoed by our board tonight, that it's successful. It is successful because we've worked together very purposefully. We've been responsive to one another and to our community, and we've been willing to innovate each step of the way. We didn't build a distance learning model on August 12th that we're still in today. That we have listened to our families, our teachers are responsive and innovative and have been able to iterate each step of the way. And that's what's made us so good. So I want to let everyone know that whatever we do next, we're starting from scratch. School is starting from scratch in this baseline model, and it will be messy as we work together to figure out what's best. But our teams will iteratively and innovatively take us to, I'm sure, a place that we'll be doing it better than most. And so I just think it's really important that we recognize, as good as we got here by really hard work and trusting our teachers and allowing them to be innovative. On the operations side of the house, our readiness looks good. All of our operational memos are either in draft form or final form. By November 1st, it'll all be buttoned up into a manual for us internally. We will need to bring staff onto campus for some time to train all of our protocols in small, safe groups prior to opening at some point. So this agreeing on an opening date for us as a school is really important, so we can backwards map from there. And that includes classified and certificated. And then on the COVID-related operations, all of our safety protocols are in final form. We've done a good job of really using those since we've had base on campus in our small, stable cohorts. But we've also recently buttoned up our notification and tracing systems, which is really a feather in the cap of Melissa Grunholz, Amy Wells, that whole ops team who's done a great job on this. We have a good protocol for notification and tracing that we think is working, and we've already had several notifications internally regarding people who have potential exposures out there in the community. So one note here that I would say is that this part's really important because the county has said we are in red right now. If we open in red and the county goes back to purple, the school does not close down. So what we've been told by the county public health is, schools, you open, keep your kids in small cohorts, have your tracing and notification documentation put together and buttoned up tight, because once you open, you don't close. But you have to be ready and expect that the new normal is you're going to be closing cohorts, classrooms, grade levels, one at a time, and that you should expect that that's going to be normal, that you're going to see grade levels closing and reopening. And that, again, this disruption of going from distance learning to this hybrid A-B model to all of a sudden, oh my goodness, this grade level is closed, this one just reopened. That's a lot of disruptive change that we need to get our community ready for. And that's why all this clarity and communications is so important to us, so that everybody knows exactly what we're doing and when we're doing it. Last piece then is the timeline that I'm going to talk about, is when we should reopen. The steps to determine that reopening date are somewhat built into this calendar right here, right? We're working with our partners regionally. We are designing the instructional piece. We already made the decision about how to determine the best time for transition, because we recognize transitioning before the end of the trimester, it's going to be such a disruption, we're just going to mess up that reporting period. It makes a lot of sense to get past the report card so that at least we can keep consistency up until there, because we will see a slowdown in learning when we move to baseline. Because again, as I've expressed already, we're working on engagement and trust and classroom norms. There's a lot of work to be done to restart school mid-year. So we think already pushing out past the trimester is a good idea. So let's go forward and see how we can look at the calendar. So the county announced on the 13th of October, that's that red dot on the screen right there. Let me see that red dot. They announced, okay, you can now start to consider next steps. So it's 4 weeks from that red dot to the end of the trimester. So that's that box right there. Right at the end of the trimester, we have Parent Conference Week, which I don't assume we would open in Parents Conference Week, and then we have Thanksgiving. So that's why we said in that letter, the next potential opening spot, if you follow that logic, is the day after Thanksgiving, which is November 30th, and you can see that little red box down there that gives you 3 weeks of in-class time until winter break, or you can punt out to that second red box, which is early January. So far in Sacramento County, we've had one district, Folsom, try to say they were opening up in November, but they've had to backpedal because they're having some labor conversations. So we don't know that they'll be able to stick to November. San Juan just came out yesterday and said they're opening up in January, but no other district in the county has claimed a date. Now, Natomas Unified School District came out and said the same within 48 hours of our letter. Their letter said they also were not going to open at least until November 30th at the earliest, and they backpedaled a little bit because they had a board meeting last night. And they had sent out an email today that said they could even open up as early as November 16th, but they do not have an agreement yet, so I don't know how that process is going to go. I guess what I'm telling you is we don't see anyone who's firmly put a flag down credibly and said they're reopening in November, but we do have San Juan in January. We do have NP3 in January. We have the Language Academy, which is a charter partner of ours, in January. They actually stagger all the way out to February. They have an interesting plan. And, I've been working with Natomas Charter Schools Executive Director Joe Wood. He has a board meeting on Monday, and we've been real clear with each other, saying, hey, if our boards both agree to kind of angle toward January, then with their safety in numbers. If our board goes that way and his board goes that way, then that's maybe where we'll end up. But I want to hear, before we commit to anything, where our team thinks we are and should be. And so the last piece then is this little timeline. Tonight's board meeting leads to November 1st, where our plan completion comes out. Then you have a board meeting on November 12th, then our communication checkpoint, then back from Thanksgiving and back from winter break. So my proposed next steps would be that we would release details, not all the details, but enough details on November 1st to our families so they had a clear understanding of what we're asking, and we'd put a survey involved so that I can come back to the board on November 12th and report to you our reopening plans in full, and I could include some parent data of where they're at and what they're intending to do. Now, these plans are really based on community public health, because if it in the next 30 days it goes back to where it was 30 days ago, then that will be telling. And it also depends on what we select as a reopening date in the next couple of weeks as we iterate forward. So with all that said, I would ask for a discussion amongst the board. I'd love to know first from the board, we're not taking a vote tonight because it's not an action item, but I would like to hear your voice and your thoughts on the viability of November versus January. And then I'll certainly entertain a discussion regarding all the different components. And we'll take copious notes to make sure that your thoughts are represented as we go forward. So, Hope, do you want me to roll call it around? Do you want to just open it up? I apologize, I hadn't planned that one out.
You had originally, when we spoke earlier, wanted to do a whip around. So in that sense, I think it does make sense to go in a semblance of order.
Okay.
I'm happy to call that out, though, but I'd like to stick to, again, a sort of alphabetical system. Vasa, would you be comfortable going first on that round? You don't have to go first.
No, yeah, that's fine. I have a couple thoughts just to kind of start us off.
Thank you. And then Sean would be after Vasa.
I'm definitely clear on the data and our original strategy for how we're going to handle coming back to school during COVID. What I appreciate about some of the strategic plans you're making right now is really watching the bigger districts, seeing what's going on, pinpointing who's opening and when, and then partnering with Natomas Charter and communicating with them as kind of two schools of similar size in a similar place, saying, hey, what are we doing on this scale, and then looking across the county. So I think it's really, I think we're just right where we need to be. I do, as we look at those November dates, I think the stress of having a Thanksgiving break, coming back for a couple weeks, and then going on another couple week break is maybe if that time did open up, it'd be an opportunity to get little small groups on campus. Really that full launch if it's safe after winter break. But sounds like that's what we're talking about. So that's all.
It's good. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Vasa. Sean, and then Shannon.
So I'm kind of I'm probably not much use because I have kind of two conflicting thoughts on it. First would be, let's not be hasty. Let's see how it goes if there are any people who plant their flags on that November thing, and see what transpires with those people. Other thoughts would be that maybe that that period of time between the Thanksgiving break and the winter break might be a great time to get all the norms established and then come back, sort of starting day one in January. But then I would have to defer to the teachers as to whether they think that, after winter break, the kids would have forgotten a lot of what they had just learned in that period of time. And then we have to do it all again, in which case it was a waste of time, and it might be better just coming back in January and starting then. So I don't know, but those are my thoughts.
Okay, they're great thoughts. Thank you for sharing both of them.
And I think the key there too, Sean, is that nobody knows, right? Like, we are on the new frontier. And so I just approach it like we're all trying to land on the moon and trying to figure out the best way to do that. And it's just so hard. So there are no wrong answers here, right? It's just all thoughts. Shannon, and then Michelle.
Yeah, so, I think mine are kind of just in the broader context, less about the actual flow of the educational process. But I guess I'm like a little nervous when I hear about going in November and then having, two different opportunities for everyone to go home to their families and traveling, and the impact that has on the contact tracing and the notification process. And if that just ends up actually setting us back further by opening sooner. Because I don't think I also realized that there was the direction that once you open, you cannot close. So, it's a little nerve-wracking to open when, it's going to be cold again and people will be indoors and people will be more tempted to travel and see family and all that type of stuff. And then just another comment that none of us have any control over. But, I'm just curious how we're thinking about those potential projections in terms of, winter spikes and increases in cases potentially happening as people move indoors. Obviously, we can't predict that, so that's not a helpful comment. It's just like another thing that I'm thinking about.
It's certainly on everyone's mind, Shannon, and a lot of the teachers are echoing that in leadership, talking about, well, is it wise to come back the day after Thanksgiving when everyone went to grandma's house, and then there's also are we right in the middle of flu season? So there is that. I mean, everyone's certainly talking about it. One thing to note, everybody, I don't know if I said it clearly before, but I thought I tried to say it. The county says if we open in red and we go to purple, we don't close. And I think you guys caught that, but I don't know that I said this part, and it is this. So transparently, I've got to say it. If we don't open in red and we hold out till January and the county goes purple, we may not be able to open. So it is a thought. Now, it seems odd to me that if we open in red and it turns purple, meaning it's too unsafe to go to school, we can still go. But if we don't open in red and it turns purple, meaning it's too unsafe to go to school, we can't go to school. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I wanted to just let you know that that is our current understanding of the situation. Not that it can't or won't change, but if that helps you think through it, I just want to share it.
And it's actually maybe perfect. And Michelle, I'm not putting you on the spot, but that you're not, because you're probably our person most knowledgeable with how things are like what the current sort of rules are. If you don't mind opining, and you don't have to, no pressure.
No, it's funny because you stole a little bit of my thunder, John. I was going to clarify that piece because this has come up in a lot of points of discussion amongst my work. So you're correct, John, that if you say we're in red now, and if we make the decision not to begin the process of opening, think about that for a moment, then you cannot open once we go back to purple. However, schools have been doing a phased approach to opening and a phased planning. So say you just started with one grade level in red, that is your gateway to be able to stay open and continue opening in purple. But you would not be able to, and then you would fall under the opening rules, right? So you can continue down your phased trajectory. And I will say, as I've been talking, this conversation came up today as we were talking with different jurisdictions, and what we're finding is that even beyond the waiver schools, many other schools and school districts have not actually rushed to reopen. Teachers have been a huge piece of that, but I think the other piece that maybe we didn't highlight as much so far is that parents and families are choosing to stay in distance learning. And this is even in jurisdictions where their case, they're in yellow, potentially, or orange. Their parents are still kind of sticking with the distance learning. So I think it's one thing to think through too, that even if we do open, there's no guarantee that families are going to feel comfortable yet. And this is very much, since March, been moving targets, right? The numbers have changed and swayed. And I think it's really important for us to think about, as we mentioned, the holidays are coming. Many other things are starting to reopen. And people are going to naturally want to participate in a lot of these activities. And so that brings a different element. I think if we were talking about how shut down things are maybe a month ago and then schools reopening in that climate, that's one thing. But we're also thinking about, as these case numbers are going down, there's more potential for folks to move about and engage in these activities. And so this is a very different climate. The one thing that I wanted to just mention too is that my biggest concern is that you have the teachers, John, you talked about the two cohorts under kind of the orientation baselining process and then the distance learning cohort. What we haven't talked about is the shutdown, right? So while you are not forced to shut down if you go back to purple, if there are certain amounts of cases on the campus or a certain number of cohorts and exposures, there's the closing of cohorts. And what does that mean for a student who was in distance learning, went back into the classroom setting, and now their cohort had an exposure, and now they're going back into the distance learning, and then once that 14-day or that quarantine period is over, they're going back into the learning cohort. And what does that classroom structure look like? What happens if the teacher is part of that cohort that has to be removed? What happens to the other students? And so I think we all really want to see kids back in school. I think it's really not as easy as we would want it to be in terms of the decision making and the pieces of the puzzle. And my concern is that if we have these teachers right now who under distance learning can serve our students very well, and then we open at a point in time where there could be more likelihood of these cohorts having to close down, are we losing our staffing capacity to continue teaching our students? And I think I mentioned this in a previous meeting, but I also worry about what does the substitute world look like under this landscape? So I just think it's really important to think about learning loss and
the potential for that as we move forward. I know we'll do things the Westlake way and as safe as possible, and I don't doubt that. But there are a lot of curveballs that we're not going to be able to control. I have just asked, what are you seeing in schools? What are the cases looking like? And there have been cases, obviously. I have heard of cohorts having to be closed down. I have not heard of schools having to be shut down yet. Not to say that it's not happening, but I have not heard that. And testing capacity is like a huge challenge. And so while we don't have huge levels of like children and youth having, gotten the virus, the other piece that we're talking through and we're learning more about is that there's not an incredible amount of access to youth testing right now. And so that also could be giving us false assurances that, things are stable within the younger cohort. There's been some early, and shut me up if I'm going too wonky, but there has been some early reports, and it seems to be, cases in kids, not so bad, all of that. But again, in California, I think we're still like ramping up that youth testing capacity. And so that leads me to just a few things that I would just say is, one, I'm really, one of my biggest question that I would love to hear about from John is, where are the teachers at? How are they feeling? I know that they're planning alongside West, leadership and everything, but I really do want to know, like, what are you getting in terms of feedback from the teachers, and what are their concerns and hopes and everything from that standpoint? Two, I do want to make sure that we're continuing to have access to learning, especially for the students that are really struggling under distance learning. So would love to hear a little bit about, and it doesn't have to be today, but what are our teachers saying about students? How are students performing? I know personally I have a daughter that's performing better than she ever was in school. But what are we seeing across the board? Are kids performing lower? And if so, are we pulling them out and making sure that they have access to the cohort? And maybe instead of trying to go back in before January, maybe an alternative or a way to offset some of the challenges that we're seeing in the students is, can we expand cohorts a bit more? And is there an opportunity to do that? So that would be my other question is are there kids that need a cohort that don't have access to one right now? And then the only other thing, and this is more logistics, but schools have to find a way to have testing for teachers. And so I would love to hear at some point a little bit more about the testing strategy. Sorry to take up so much time.
No, you're great. I'm so thankful for you. Thank you, Michelle. I'm trying to write it down. I'll just answer the four thoughts. One is on the closing of cohorts, classrooms, and schools. One thing that I think I understand is that a school has to have 5% of its total school capacity test positive for a full school closure. Well, I mean, remember we shut down in March. We shut down the Elk Grove Unified School District because one person tested positive. It's 45,000 students or so. So now at Westlake Charter School, if you had to have 5% of your entire population test positive to close the school, you're talking about 50 cases. So I cannot imagine a world where I say to the parents, hey, everybody, we're at 12 cases. Keep coming to school. Oh, we're at 26 cases. Keep coming. Hey, we're at 39. It's such a weird, I think people would just go, deuces. So I think that's an interesting thought that I don't know that we ever get to 50, but that I think is the metric is 5%. So I think that's so interesting.
It also says multiple cohorts though. And so it says multiple cohorts as well.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
Multiple cohorts affected or 5%. And so what's happens if we see that?
Yeah, what's multiple? Yeah. Is 2 multiple? Yeah, right.
Well, doesn't it say in 14 days as well? So it's also a rolling target. So you'd be like updating the school on 16 cases, but then the next update, 4 had rolled off and you would have picked up 6. And so the transparency of that rolling number, I mean, school-wide, but even cohort-wide, could be really difficult for families to plan on and feel comfortable with. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. It's just
good.
It's a very long little section when you parse it out, right? You find all these different pieces on the checklist for closing, and it's difficult to manage.
Yeah, and what I've learned about crisis management, is that the best laid plans, get you to the starting line, And then as soon as you start managing those plans within the crisis, you're like, oh, well, that's not going to work. I mean, just every iterative move we've made in the last 8 months is like learning on the spot. And this is a tricky subject to learn on the spot. So great question, Michelle, about teachers. I'll share with you, and I almost built a slide, but so I looked at the teacher surveys from June. Exact same question I gave them in September. And I said, hey, how comfortable are you coming back? And in June, they were much more comfortable. There was it was much more of a J curve. Hey, let's go back. We've got this. We're going to be okay. Well, it might be a little scary down here. And now it's really a perfect bell. And that shift in perception lines up perfectly with, in June when we took that survey, if you look at the epidemiology website of the daily count, over here in June when we took that survey, there was almost no daily count higher than 10. And then we lived through the summer, and of course our perception has shifted. So our teachers are worried. I think they're worried about they have multiple worries. Many of them worry that our students are falling behind and need to get in the classroom. And that same teacher worries that, oh my goodness, if they all come in the classroom, is one of us going to get sick? I think there's more worry, and people out there listening, and our staff, please push back on me and I'll report back. But I find a lot of worry at the middle school and the upper grades about being in a classroom with large-bodied students, because the rhetoric is that the little kids probably don't transmit the virus, but anybody over about this size might. And as a middle school teacher, we look around and half the kids are bigger than me, and so they go, hey, this might be dangerous. I think also we worry about what school looks like, knowing that what's working right now, like in the middle school, for example, a lot of what we're doing is really working. And it feels good. Like you said, Michelle, some of the kids are actually doing better. And I'll get on to that next piece in just a second about how to help those who aren't. But because there's some stuff working, balanced out with that fear of coming back due to the virus transmission, there are certainly some worries. However, as I talk to some of the lower grades, K1, 2, and say, hey, I don't know, I mean, if we skipped over the baseline, the A-B funkiness, if 30% of our families said, hey, we're just going to stay in distance learning, and that took your class size of 19 down to 15, would you want to just come back 5 days a week? And not everyone's like, let's do it on day one, but I think the teachers are saying, if it's safe enough to go back, it makes more sense to go back every day so that I'm only teaching 2 cohorts. So that's something the teachers are going to have to continue to inform us through this process. So I don't know that I'm speaking for everyone, but I am giving you a sense of what I'm sensing. I have a little survey data. I have lots of wonderful relationships with the people that we work with, and I sit in those those staff meetings and say, hey, I'll stay on the screen if anyone wants to stay and talk. And we stay until 6 o'clock at night on more than one occasion, just talking about our worries around this topic. So our staff are concerned. I also have to be honest, and I'm going to say this and we're going to get stormed, but we haven't received a single email since the letter went out that says, hurry up and open. I think the family response at this point is like, yeah, we're a little concerned too. I think everyone's a little exhausted by the fear. So I think it's okay for us to go slow and take it safe, and from the teacher side and the parent side. Certainly, as is America today, there is some campiness. There are definitely those on the fringe who are like, I don't think I can ever go back in a public setting. And those who are like, why aren't we opening school tomorrow? I mean, I get that there's there, but I think most of our data clusters in the middle of like, oh, I'm nervous, but I think we could do a good job when it's time to do it. So I don't know if that's a clear enough answer, Michelle. I'll do more, and Amy, make a note. We'll do some more clear surveying with our staff before I come back to you in November, if that's okay. As far as the access and the learning loss, I maybe didn't explain it well enough, but that is what the Student Support Services team has been charged with, is how to you got a good handle on our highest need kids, how do you come down and say, okay, might we pull small, stable cohorts of the kids who need us? You know, your child is doing real well in distance learning, right? My child is doing real well in distance. But if this child's not, and I spoke to a couple middle school teachers today who were like, oh my gosh, out of my 56 kids, each group of 28, they're killing it. But I got 5 in each group that could use some help. And we're like, hey, maybe those are the 5 that need to come in and get in a small, stable cohort between now and when we eventually open. And then on that piece, you had mentioned like a staggered opening. And you know, there's some real logic. I look at Language Academy, who I just think they're a great organization, charter organization. They have done a very long, slow stagger where they're like, hey, the little kids are coming back, and we're going to be back for a couple of 3 weeks, and then the little bigger kids are going to come back. But those middle schoolers, the big kids aren't even coming back till like February at Language Academy. And as I talk to our staff, I go, I kind of get that. We have more of an urgent need to get the kinders back than we do the middle schoolers. Because the middle schoolers can do such a wonderful job of jumping into a Google Meet, jumping into a breakout room, collaborating digitally. The kindergartners just can't. And so I think those pieces work together. Did that answer that, Michelle? The access piece? Yeah. The substitute piece and all of the opening and closing and the quarantining. I mean, we're tabletopping those exercises, but like I said, the best laid plans until the day you get there. But we are definitely thinking about how to keep the classroom community together so that they are a unit that moves in and out of these scenarios together. And heaven forbid, yes, if a teacher is quarantined, I mean that or becomes sick, that is really going to be a challenge for us. And then the last piece, the testing piece. The Natomas Unified School District has a testing facility every Tuesday, and we've drawn up a map meeting the county recommendation that if our staff wished to be tested on a cyclical basis, we can send a cohort of our staff each week, such that everyone will have received a COVID test. I think it's every 2 months is the recommendation, so it's 25% of your staff per 2-week window, so that you end up with 100% of your staff after 8 weeks. Oh, maybe it's 8 weeks. So did I do the math wrong there? Anyway, we got a little chart. Now, we can't mandate people to go get testing, but we can say, hey, here's free testing. The testing results go to you as the employee. We've already had several employees utilize this service at the Natomas Unified School District's facility that's facilitated by the county. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, cool. Sorry, I hope. Who's up next?
Josh is up next,
Josh,
and then Jen.
All of my questions or comments have already been addressed and answered, so I'm good. Thank you, Hope.
Josh, do you have a sense though of where you are you? I guess everybody.
I'm not eager to. One of the questions I had, I guess that wasn't John. I mean, I'm even wondering if we go back in January. When does the second trimester end? Is it end of February, mid-March?
I'm looking at Patel. I'm looking at Wells. Somebody help me out.
March.
You say it's March?
Yeah, right at the very beginning. It's like the first Friday in March.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I'm seeing success in what we're doing. I'm hearing success in what we're doing. So I'm not eager to go back unless, I'm eager to go back when it's ready. But I worry. My biggest worry was, the community. Is the community pushing? Is there a need for the community to get us back open? And when I hear, John, you saying that we still have scholarships available for base, we still have spots available for base, I'm not seeing, like you are, John, a huge community push to get the kids back open. And that's where I want to keep them as safe as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah, to be clear, base capacity is really only at about 1/3 right now. And that is with, full scholarships on the table and, trying to get people in there. Amy Wells on the screen has been amazing when she interacts with a family who's struggling at all, she's said, "Hey, can we get you in base? We got you," and she's recruited a few people in. So yeah, there's still capacity. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jed, this might be horrible timing. Do you want me to come back to you, or are you good?
For me, no, I'm fine.
You're good?
Yeah, so I think that the most important thing is just surveying the teachers and the parents. And all of the data that I'm seeing seems reinforced by this, which is that parents aren't in a huge rush to get kids back, and they're not holding schools accountable, or they're not irritated with schools for not opening early. But there are a lot of parents that are super pissed about how bad remote is, and they think it could be better. And so what I would be doing is just trying to have as little distraction on these things that we can't control, like when we go back. So I think there's going to be a moment when it's intuitive that we go back, and we're going to kind of go back when that happens, right? Meanwhile, how can we keep pushing so that we feel like our remote learning is better every single week? And it's changing.
It is.
Maybe we're finding ways to bring larger cohorts of kids in, consistent with good health practices and whatever, under a model that's very similar to what we have right now, but has some push-ins that continue to distinguish what we're doing on remote learning from all the other stuff. That's where I would. We can agonize over when we come back, and every single trend and every single data line and every single political fight and most of it seems like a complete waste of time. If it distracts you from staying on doing great remote learning. And so that's what I would encourage you to do.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I need to hear.
Thanks, Jed. Ashley, I'll let you go before me, I guess.
Either way, I just had a couple of thoughts. I loved, Michelle had so much great insight. I always, you joined at the right time. We're so lucky to have you, but goodness, if it was a year from now, where would we be? And it made me think about other things that were kind of bubbling in my mind over time. One of the things that we keep seeing is, you John, you talked about like the size of the middle schools to the littles. You talked about that component, but we're starting to see these articles out here that are saying like our youth are the secret spreaders, right? Like they're not tested, and my question, they're not tested, so like numbers don't lie, but there's no numbers to tell us, so the numbers look really good. And so my question is really, on youth testing. I know children who mom was exposed and mom took kid to site and site said no symptoms, you're not getting tested. And so I haven't been real up to date on the current testing practices. In the last, they've just changed so much, I kind of walked away. I know what's available to me as an educator, but what is available to our youth? Are they going to have the access in the same way? Because it's not acceptable to be back in school and for you not to have a symptom so you don't get a test. That's just not okay. And our state has to and our nation has to recognize, if you're saying kids go back to school, then they get access the same as those teachers. So I just wonder, and I don't know what the update is. It's changed 4 million times in the last 90 days, I'm sure. But that's just a question I have. I love what Jed said about being better each week. And so I do, and we've talked about it as a staff, how can we share these continue to share, even the tiniest thing, like this light that my friends, now you can see my face and I'm not so dark, just the tiny little quirks and things that my kids can see when I enunciate for phonics now because I have a light on my face. Tiny little quirks that really make a big difference and make us better each week is big. I too am with Michelle. I now in the last week have heard of 5 different states colleges in 5 different states, and who are saying, you know what, this is our practice. You go home at Thanksgiving, dorms are closed down. You don't get to come back until after the holiday break. Do distance learning from Thanksgiving to Christmas. And so when I start to see this trend start to get bigger and bigger, I'm like, yeah, it feels weird that we're like, but we're going to try it. And, you know, I listened to the NUSD their board meeting last night, and they talked about equity, and they talked about those number of days and that learning loss. But then I separated it out, and it's 14 school days. But if you're in A cohort, that's 6. And they're shorter days. And if you're in B cohort, that's 5. And they're shorter days. So now what's the push? What's the rush for 5 days in the time of year where kids are the squirreliest, most unfocused? I just don't know. But then a second layer of that is I do wonder if possibly the days after January break, for all the reasons why we wouldn't come directly back after Thanksgiving, if maybe those are those teacher training days, so that we spread out the last holiday enough that the contact time from these big group gatherings that our families may have had is not the day we start school. But it's enough later that you would have been symptomatic. So those are just some of my thoughts and wonderings.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. When I was talking to the Natomas Charter School, one of the things that they were considering was a mid-January start, where it gave the first week or two of distance learning to prepare for coming back to campus, but it also gave that time to, let everybody wear off the winter break there.
Well, and since I'm next anyway, the test is only as good as the exact moment it's given. And it is very difficult from an employer point of view to identify the exposure window still, where we do our best guesses at contact tracing and we dial it back to 2 days and we try to piece the pieces together. But even the best laid plans are taking time. I mean, Michelle chatted that it's something they're working on for pediatric testing, but we're not there yet, right? And so it's interesting. I am in a unique situation, I think, from other board members, in that my student has a report back date of next Friday, and will be in full hybrid learning classroom style as of November 2nd. And we have a lot of discussions to have in our family this weekend. Because when she went back in August, I would have been like, oh yeah, she's going back, right now. And now I'm like, hey, should I email them and ask them if January is an option? Like, if I have to pick now, can I pick just for semester 1 and send her back in January? But as a freshman, am I sending her back because her cohort will go back, but she won't be there? And so I only share this in the sense that every family is going to be facing a unique set of challenges, a unique set of exposures. Kids in multiple schools are doing multiple things, right? And so it's just hard. And so the more that we can just continue to do what we're doing, John, and clearly communicate what our decision points are, what we're using to make our decisions, and the why we're making it, I think it's still ultimately up to each individual family to decide what's best for them. It's hard. There is no good answer, right? People are already stressed with, I saw that, with different bucket levels right now, right? This has gone on, I think, much longer than any of us had anticipated, right? But we're in a rhythm now, right? We know what that distance learning schedule looks like. We've figured out supports, or we've developed pods, or right. I am in full support of us making a decision like we've done all along based on what our gut is telling us, what health information is telling us. It's hard not to look at the national data and not expect an uptick to come shortly. And I think Halloween and personal behaviors that we see in the community around that might be very telling to this discussion on November 2nd. But when you have Dr. Fauci on TV talking about how he's not seeing his own family for Thanksgiving because he's concerned about spread, and I believe the director of Harvard Medical School hypothesizing that we've made some choices in opening bars and restaurants before schools that maybe weren't the best if our ultimate goal was to open schools, it's hard not to just sit back and say, hey, let's do this right. Let's protect our family. Let's listen to what the experts are telling us. I mean, the information will be there. But the fact that the Lancet just this week publishing about reinfection, like we just don't know enough yet. And so I helped edit the letter, so I'm aware of the timeline, full disclosure. But I like how he laid it out. I think that, I don't know, I keep coming back to our goal around communication. And as long as we continue to tell people the why we're doing it right.
Good.
So that's my very long and winded 2 cents. I'm sorry. I had to hold on to it for a very long time.
All of your comments were very useful and very much appreciated, so thank you. I'll open it up for any other comments regarding this topic, and then I'll step off the stage because I think we have a special guest who's in the wings right now, ready to walk out into the spotlight and wow you. And I know it's been 2 hours, but trust me, you're going to be glad you stayed for this part of the show. Emily Batten shows up next. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns you want to enter into the notes here?
I just want to say, just because thinking now that everyone has kind of shared their thoughts, like especially to Hope's like personal experience there, as someone who has a partner who works at a college university in a state that does not care about any of this and is fully open and is hosting an unrestricted football game this weekend, it is terrifying. And so I think that being cautious and safe and asking, I think to everyone's point, asking the families and the teachers what they're comfortable with can't really be overestimated.
Very good.
Well, and I came into that point, right, where I feel really lucky that I, in my work life, right, work in a county that does have a public university who has had students come back, who we had anticipated a huge uptick in cases, but they seem to be doing it right. Sure, I mean, I'm not going to say that their cases have been non-existent. I'm not going to say there hasn't been any, but there is a way of doing it right, and it's nice to be in a work setting where I can see that happening. It's a private school, but I have a friend whose kids go to St. James and Davis, right? And to see their classroom set up and how they've done it, and they're all back because they got their classes small enough with those who elected to stay home. So, John, kind of like your model, like if we could go all the way to 4 because of who's elected not to come. But to see that sort of roll out too, so that's great for us because we can learn from it. Right? We have this opportunity to watch and learn, and I don't think there's anyone out there that does it better than this team in terms of finding out the pieces that fit best for us and making it work in a way that benefits our community. Sorry, that was long-winded to chime back on again. But Davis has impressed me, and so giving them a shout-out, go Aggies. When we really were, you anticipate the worst and hope for the best, and it's solidly on the more positive side of thought.
Thank you all for your input. You know how to find me, and as we continue to communicate going forward, please feel free to reach out to me directly and collaborate with me about anything any thoughts or questions or concerns you have. Hope
I would just like to read Stingers Up into the record today, just to keep things fair and balanced.
Stingers Up!
Well, I really Mustangs, because technically, not stupid, that's a bad word, but Davis, the Mustangs, come on. We're not the... John, real fast before we jump to the fabulous and most excellent Mrs. Emily Batten.
You want to take a break?
That would work for any public comment?
Oh, yeah, I think we're going to take a little fiber break. Oh, look at that, we got public comment. I'm so glad you asked. Let me.
That's my role here.
Let me see what we have here. From the Canamino family. Canamino. No, Canim. I am so sorry. I'm very tired. Canamo. From the Canamo family. Here we go. Good evening. As a parent, I fully support board member Jed's comment about focusing efforts on what we have control over rather than when we return. I'd rather be late to this party. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will forward that to you, Ms. Wells, right now to enter into the minutes in the record.
That's cute. Be late to the party.
And just checking for any others. I think that's all we have.
Perfect. And if anything does come in, obviously we'll check again after Mrs. Batten's presentation. So, there's still time. John, did you want to take a 5-minute break?
It's your show, man. I'm sitting right in my office where I've been since 6 a.m. I'm fine.
Okay, because I'm all for powering through. If a board member wants something different, now is the time to double wave your hands to let me know. Okay, then we're good to go.
All right. Mrs. Batten, I believe, well, first of all, welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, Emily Batten.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Hi, everybody.
Hi, I am. Hey, you want me to take down my slides? You put up your slides?
That'd be great. You can hear me, yes. I have. Oh, is that going to mess? Is that going
you know what? We can't do that because of the YouTube situation. Are your slides on my slides?
They can be.
Yeah, let's stall.
Very shortly, if we wanted to maybe take that 5-minute break.
Hey, Hope, can we take a 5-minute break?
I see some hands flashing. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So 5-minute break. Joe, I don't think you can stop recording though, so I'm not sure what we do.
I won't stop recording. If everyone just turns off their camera and their mic, then you won't be on YouTube taking a break. And then Em, if you put your slides on these slides, I'll refresh.
Okay, and then we'll be back at 8:40.
8:40 it is. Very good. It's just me. Hello, YouTube.
You know you don't mind it being just you. Just saying.
Sing to us.
I can sing. I have my guitar right here in my office.
I'm shocked at that.
Sorry, don't tell. Okay.
You have an office guitar and a home guitar?
Yep, I have an office guitar and a home guitar. I need to fix these slides here. I think Emily's pasting slides on now. Okay. All right, she's pasting in there now, and oops, I'll be right back.
Move into my comfy seat. Although, are we still recording?
Yes.
He's still recording.
Yes, you are live on YouTube in your comfy seat.
Comfy seat.
Hey, I'll go ahead and I'm really proud of myself for knowing when the second trimester ends.
I feel like I've been here 13 years. I should be allowed to say random things like, are we still recording? Is this thing on?
You're totally allowed to, and I will just announce that it is now 8:40, so if board members, I'm not going to require you to turn on your camera, but if you could at least let me know you're back, I would appreciate it so we can start. There you go. Okay, so I just need to see Vasa, Shannon, and Ashley. Yes, I'm actually watching. Okay, one more. I think I saw Josh. Or actually, we can start, Em. We don't have to vote on this, so we don't, we have a quorum even if they're not back, so let's go ahead since it's 8:40.
It is 8:40. Everybody can hear me. I've been having some okay, awesome. And you can see the slides. John, there's a lot of animation in these slides, so we'll work together to make that happen. All right. Well, thank you all for hanging out and staying into the night with me. I'm so excited to be back this month to present with you and welcome you to the fourth quarter of high school planning. You'd think that this would be toward the end, but we actually have 6 quarters, ironically. And so we're in the fourth quarter, which we've been 15 days in that fourth quarter, and we can advance the next slide. I have to remember to do that. I'm advancing my own slides. I will do advance reminders. So I want to start off by just sharing some quarter 4 highlights that are on the next slide. In quarter 4, we will be launching the lottery. So exciting. We're hosting Innovators Invitational. There's a lot of communication with families happening in the fourth quarter. But tonight, I'm going to update you on 2 important items that are taking place in the fourth quarter. And that is recruitment of a diverse applicant pool for our staffing purposes, and then the beginning conversations and development of a math placement policy, which is actually a policy that will turn into a board policy to be voted on by this board in the future. So this is the beginning work of those pieces. And I want to give a shout out to our October board meeting where Jed asked us about professional development for our teachers in math and how to ensure that our teachers would have the correct philosophy and mindset. So that really set us up for this conversation today. And then to Michelle for asking about hiring practices. So the 2 of you ended the last board meeting with the perfect question to segue into tonight's meeting. And so we'll jump into building a diverse applicant pool and our staffing practices first. As we looked at the process of backwards mapping from the hiring date to today and building that diverse applicant pool, we really wanted to start with attributes that we see in our K-8. Last month, I spoke a lot about the extension of our K-8, our extension of our mission statement. And so it makes sense when we talk about staffing to go and look at those attributes that our amazing rock star staff have at Westlake in the K-8 and take those attributes and backwards map them. And we have a quick infographic just to share some of those attributes with you this evening. And I think you'll recognize some of them in our staff. So now there are 8 points here that if you'll continue to see this infographic through our hiring materials and things, but I'd like to highlight 3 of them tonight. First, we're looking for staff that are seeking opportunities to collaborate with our community and value the diverse community found in Natomas. And I want to highlight that one because, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are seeking a diverse applicant pool. We're taking concrete measures to make sure that we end up with that diverse applicant pool. And one of the pieces that we want to ensure is that our staff the staff that are interested in coming to work with us know that we are a diverse community. It's a community that we celebrate, and we want staff that is seeking that work, seeking the work with a diverse community, because we know that again, will attract that diverse applicant pool. Next, we're looking to employ staff that enjoy facing challenges and working hard to find innovative solutions. We started talking since January, really, but last in September, talked a lot about some of the innovative practices that we'll be implementing in our high school, the embedded honors program, our flex blocks, and we're looking for a staff that is not only going to hear about those innovations and get excited about them, but is also going to look to innovate alongside us through our continued shared leadership model as our high school grows and develops. And then finally, I want to point this out, and in John's presentation, we talked about those attributes that make a global citizen as they apply to Strategic Area 5, and I think, or Strategic Goal 5. It is so important to us that our staff believe that all students possess the necessary skills to lead as global citizens. And this is actually going to tie really nicely as we talk about math tonight, that our staff have a very clear belief that these attributes, the focus on inclusion, diversity, equity, and cultural competencies is something that all students can walk out of 12th grade with, and the many layers that lie below each of those attributes. Okay, next. So it begins with that curation of the attributes that we are looking for in our staff, beginning to identify who that staff avatar is, and then we have begun taking steps as we enter the fourth quarter. We began with community connections, and I think I have a flyer up on the screen of our Innovators Invitational, and I want to jump to that because I'm so excited about that event. But really the work began last June as the news of our high school came out to the community. Our executive director has many connections with high school. Leslie Sargent has connections in the high school world, as do I, and those colleagues began reaching out to us and wanting to have conversations. And so Leslie and I have been able to connect with several staff members who are already interested in coming or exploring the opportunity to join our applicant pool as those jobs get posted in January. And so making those community connections, fostering those connections is a really important piece, because even if that staff member, that person who's interested, doesn't join our staff, they know 5 or 6 other people who they're going to spread that information to. And again, we're just making sure that we're reaching our net really wide. The next piece is the Innovators Invitational. And this is actually something that we talked about back in the spring before the world sort of turned upside down. And it was intended to be an in-person event where we were going to bring area rockstar high school educators into a room together and do kind of an ed camp style where we would share our high school model with them. We'd throw some spaghetti against the wall and share some of our ideas and hear their thoughts on it, and then they would be able to share with us some of their thoughts. And even as we transitioned to distance learning last year, we still were in conversation with about 15 people who were like, yeah, we still want to do it. Let's make it virtual. And we said, we tentatively looking at June, and we got to June, and those people were like, hey, it's a little bit tough for us right now. This has been a long haul. So out of respect for them, for that group, we pushed it back and kind of just let it hang there, knowing that it was something we wanted to do. And as we looked at our hiring timeline and really beginning to recruit that diverse applicant pool, this event still continued to resonate for us, was still something that we wanted to do as a pre-recruitment event. And so we've put it sort of right a month before our applications will go live. And we have re-energize that base, and I would ask the board too. I know Shannon emailed John earlier this summer and shared a contact that was interested in potentially coming to check out our high school. So if you have other high school educators in your lives, please send them our way. And we are looking to cultivate a good-sized group in all areas of high school, everything from administrators to social science teachers. I don't know why that was my spectrum, but that's what we shared. So we are looking forward to a great virtual event and really excited to connect with these individuals. And then our next steps, where we're going next. So jobs will be posted January 1st. And traditionally schools turn to EdJoin. So if you're not familiar with EdJoin, it's a catch-all website for all job postings. It's Steve Corving's favorite website. In fact, he will tell you all about it. And it's traditionally where schools will go to post, right? It's where everyone looks. And as we looked at the practices that industries are focusing on to hire or to recruit a diverse applicant pool, we saw the need to really again, cast our net wide and not just go the traditional route. And so what you see here is a smattering of organizations that we are partnering with to ensure that our job postings are reaching outside of our EdJoin network. We've obviously partnered with several area universities and colleges, not just to recruit their current teaching candidates, but also, typically a professor will stay in contact with students 5 to 10 years after graduation. And so getting some of those candidates in our mix as well. There is, through marketing through Facebook and Twitter, obviously connecting through LinkedIn. There's an organization called WorkWide, which is actually primarily focused on the tech industry, but is working to break into education. One of its advisors is Glenn Singleton, who is a major player in that diversity and equity hiring practices. And so he was actually what kind of turned us on to this work, and we're communicating with them as well. So on January 1st and prior to January 1st, you should expect to begin to see just a marketing blitz on our jobs about to be posted and then coming out as well. And I encourage you all to share that information. And anybody watching tonight, share it as well. I often forget there's an audience out there. I think this is the end of our recruiting a diverse staff. And I'll say this, that these steps are so important to us, right? My boss is on the screen right now, and he, will tells our team consistently the most important thing that we do is recruit and retain the highest quality individuals. And once you've done that, then the rest of it, falls into place. And so from the moment I accepted this position, hiring that first team has been a priority that's been on front of mind. And so it's really exciting to be kind of on the precipice of that work. But I would like to pause here for questions, if that's okay, because I'll jump into a whole other topic that will take a bit of time. So if there's any questions or comments on staffing. Michelle?
I think it's super helpful and exciting to see questions that we raised last meeting be immediately addressed the next meeting. So thank you for doing that. And I really love to see all the thoughtfulness that's behind it. I think you had mentioned the graphic around the staffing plan would probably be utilized in future discussions. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I wanted to call out, and it seems minor, but I don't see myself reflected in that. And so I think it's really important when we do use this and broadcast it in different settings, that we even, be really mindful about the graphics so that the diverse pool can see themselves in what's being searched for.
I so appreciate you calling that out. Actually, as Leslie Starr and I were going through this presentation this afternoon, that was one of the pieces that I was like, oh, our icons are not diverse. And so we will be going back, absolutely. And actually even representing different abilities as well, right? Making sure that we're representing both all full inclusion representation of those icons. Thank you for calling that out, Michelle. I appreciate it.
Sure. And then the only other thing I would just mention, and I'm in a very different field, so if it's not as applicable in the education world, let me know. But I know that there's different groups, we have Latino caucus kind of organizations, African American organizations, and things like that. And I don't know if there's things like that exist amongst the education field, but it may, from my, I think it would be really cool to see if there are, and see if we can cast the net specifically into some of those different, groups that would target that diversity. So just another thought.
It's a great point. And I think the work we've done thus far has been primarily through the universities who have those groups represented on their campuses. There is a Latino group that is primarily focused on family support, but they have begun to enter the field of education and helping schools hire more diverse staff. So we've pretty much just begun communicating with them, but definitely looking at those groups as well. As I think the chancellor of Sac State has recently done a really marvelous job of recruiting and retaining a diverse staff on the Sac State campus. And one of the things that they had done was go into churches and community organizations, and some of those things aren't as readily available these days. I think back in February when I began thinking about this, I'm like, yes, I'm showing up to Sunday service. I will be at the farmers markets, which don't really exist right now. But I appreciate that call out and the reminder to seek outside of our normal, where we normally look. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily, how many teachers are you thinking about hiring total for next year?
9 total, so that includes teachers and student support services and some potential other support roles.
So all 9 will be new hires. You're not thinking of encouraging people from the existing K-8s to apply and perhaps take three of the positions.
Sorry, Jen. We're definitely looking for a mix. We have a lot of interest in our K-8 for some teachers to come up, and so we're looking. I think the best case scenario is having some of those teachers who have that Westlake voice to be part of our high school, as well as bringing some other outside experience into the mix.
Yeah, okay, that's great. If there weren't going to be at least 2 or 3, then I would be worried. You're setting yourself up for a cultural problem.
Right.
I actually think the more you could do, probably the better. But you're right. It's time to get some new folks in as well. I just definitely learned that at High Tech High. If you've got 3 or 4 teachers that will move from an existing to the new, you just have half the battle in terms of your staff culture taken care of from day one.
Yeah, we have there's a lot of interest and excitement around that conversation. So we are engaging with those staff members and over the next few months to talk about that piece. All right.
Wait, actually, sorry, Emily, I'm late to the trigger. So hiring is typically done by April. Would you expect that to be true too for the high school?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, Hope. We are looking at a little bit of an adjusted timeline. We've talked to some other leaders who have started high schools and asked them, hey, what was your hiring timeline? Because in our perfect world, we're able to get our staff on board as early as possible to potentially do some spring professional development with them and really begin to solidify that staff as early as possible. So we will post jobs for 3 weeks beginning in January. It's our typical initial posting period window. And then look to do that interview process in February to actually, people keep telling me, like, that's never going to happen. You'll never have everyone hired by the end of February, which, of course, makes me then want to do it by the beginning of February. So we're a little bit earlier than what our traditional K-8 job hiring timeline is.
I have no doubt that you can meet that deadline. We're Westlake, so yeah, that's not a worry. It's something, though, for Sean and I to potentially note the finance committee as we do compensation review and you begin to hire teachers. It's something that we likely need to discuss, and that's why I'm asking, because our current finance committee schedule, right, kind of concludes that evaluation after that point. Since we typically come back to the board in March or April with that recommendation. So I wanted to chat because I think it's just good for us to plan and to think about it.
Thank you for that, yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question. That was a good reminder, thinking through my lens on the impact committee. And in terms of I know what you just said about all the staffing and, really focusing first on that you want to be a part of a diverse community, I think is really important. I'm curious, during any of the hiring or, especially right after the hiring, which you're probably going to get to later, process, in terms of the language around equity and some of the other social justice initiatives that we're doing, especially because just, at least in terms of other types of changes, there's a lot of research that shows it's a lot easier to just make a ton of changes and rip lots of Band-Aids off all at once when you're doing new things. And so I think that there's potentially a lot of opportunity here to be getting that messaging in and setting people up for the type of bias trainings they can expect, or, just having that language be built into the recruitment. So I'm wondering about all of that.
Yeah, and it's a great question, Shannon. I think John mentioned earlier that I'm part of one of the social justice teams. So I'm sitting on the greater social justice team and leading the team that is doing the work of looking for an outside facilitator to to partner with us through this process. And so it's been really great to have both the K-8 lens in those conversations and talk about where our K-8 is, but then also say, we are also starting a high school that will be onboarding a large group of new staff members, as well as building a cohesive staff culture. And how could you help us partner there as well? So I agree with you. If we can really get the movement solid in 9-12, and even have some backwards filter back into K-8, that would be exciting as well. So I'm so fortunate to be part of that work, to have that lens as we hire and onboard staff.
Shannon, I think our brains were in a similar thing, because I was in the last social justice meeting. I was thinking about that piece. I remember interview, my second round or third round, I don't remember, one of the interviews, I sat down and we talked about each of the pillars. Teachers as designers, we read the entire paragraph. We talked about fit and whether that fit in. And so I had been reflecting on that experience and what we could pull from the strategic plan or, goal areas for our whole hiring process, not just for the high school, but just a similar thought. And then, thinking about how one of the best part of our interview processes is the teacher, where there's a lot of staff members, not just teachers, but a lot of staff go and interview. Is it the second or third? I don't remember. The second one. Second round.
Second. The assurance is third, but yeah.
And wondering, what a great place to have some of that discussion around beliefs and values with a team of teachers and staff that you would be working with, and how could we weave it into the second rounds even. So just had a similar thinking in our head, but not just specific to the high school. So I just love your thought process, Shannon.
Thanks, Ashley. Any other staffing? I'm going to talk slowly because I feel like I don't want to talk over somebody. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our mathematic pathways. And this is something I think every time I come in front of you, I'm so excited. And so I decided to use a different word today because I think it's more applicable, that this is work that I'm very passionate about. Something that you may not know about me is that in my teaching life, I was a math educator. And so getting to dive into this work and build a high school that aligns with our K-8 philosophy when it comes to math is something that's really exciting that I take very, very seriously. And Mrs. Sargent and I have begun to dive into that work and have come up with some really good pieces, and we're excited to share those with you this evening. So I'm going to start off with the Mathematical Association of America and the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics and their position on the goals that we should be setting for our math programs in grades 9 through 12. And so they come out and say that, hey, although calculus can play an important role in secondary schools, the ultimate goal of the K-12 math curriculum should not be to get students into and through a course in calculus by 12th grade, but to have established a mathematical foundation that will ensure students pursue whatever course of study interests them when they get to college. And I start us with that quote just to kind of build the foundation for us as we go through this work and look at some, end up looking at some models of what the math pathways could be at Westlake Charter High School. And thinking knowing that our mind is not in just those 4 years of high school, but as we are developing those global citizens, those inspired adults who are ready to lead as global citizens, that for us it is the desire to continue to study math beyond high school, that is such an important part of their ability to enter the STEM careers that we know are such a growing industry. And so I start us with that to kind of put us in that mindset together as a group. The goals of our mathematical pathway, what we're starting out with, is to ensure that all Westlake Charter High School explorers will graduate with the desire and perseverance to continue to be mathematical learners into college and beyond. That math learning, whether it is in a college level math class in 12th grade, is not the stopping point, but just the launching ground of further mathematical development. And then we're ensuring that all Westlake Charter High School explorers graduate having achieved their personalized math pathway in order to be successful in their future endeavors. And so last month I talked about that 4-year planning that will be on a consistent, continuous cycle that will continue to come back and check on that 4-year planning, and that math pathway supports that. We know, I think Jed mentioned in September, and we've talked about it, that math is a gateway, right? That math often is either the stopping point or the launching ground for students' futures, and we want to ensure that for everybody it is a launching ground into wherever they desire to land. And this is exciting. So when we talk about what has already been done in math, and this is something that you're familiar with, that in the 2014-15 school year, Westlake began that process of detracking math in grade 6, and that for the next 3 years went through all 3 grades. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the term detracking, what that means is that in 2014, Westlake decided that we were going to begin to build a clear, cohesive pathway for all of our middle school students, that they would all start in 6th grade with Math 6, transition to Math 7, and then into Math 8 in 8th grade. And at the time, I think it was what Westlake did, right? We wanted to support and serve all students. We knew that in those 3 math courses, we could personalize to meet the needs of the learners in each of those rooms so that we wouldn't have that math boredom we often hear about. And we've seen tremendous results from this. I will tell you that as I went out into the world to meet with partners and talk to other people, that this work in middle school is not usual. It is definitely not the work that people are willing to take on. And when people hear that we've done that, you've set yourself up for success. And it's exciting to connect with people who wish they were us, basically. In this program, in this 6 through 8 D tracking, our math teachers communicate that they are able to go deeper into mathematical concepts. And we knew that a piece of it was that we had blocked math and science together so that those mathematical and scientific concepts could be taught together. Mrs. Sargent has a great story, and if she was on here, she would tell you that when she was in high school, she wishes that she could have learned math through her chemistry teacher because the application of the mathematical concepts really solidified those practices for her. So again, just continuing to build on where we're headed by the work that we've already done. Another quote, in a few slides, I'm going to give you a resource playlist because I told John this morning, I could have had 75 slides worth of quotes because every time I read an article, I was like, oh, I have to share this with them. So I've limited myself to 2. You're welcome. At 9:05 at night. But as we look at the trends in mathematical international mathematics and science study, they point out that a coherent curriculum leads students through a sequence of topics and performances over the grades that reflect the logical and sequential nature of knowledge in mathematics. And actually, Jed, this is going to be creepy, but I remember years ago at a board meeting, you talking about the educational experience in other countries and specifically related to mathematics and how in America we go a mile wide and an inch deep, and how that practice is not going to build sustained mathematical students. And so as we look at this quote, we know, for example, that students should master the basic concepts of number and basic computational skills in early grades before they tackle the more difficult mathematics. And as a former math teacher, I read that, I'm like, yeah, right. In elementary school, we should teach those basic mathematical computations. And as we talked to some of our partners and shared this quote with them, they said, well, no, those are the early grades of high school. That in high school, we are truly still teaching those patterning skills and linear functions that if students don't have a concrete understanding of, when they get to that college level mathematics, they will experience frustration and disappointment and will most likely end up dropping those math classes. And so that quote is pertaining to those middle school years as well as the early years of high school. Let's talk about what detracking, that idea of having students follow a sequential math pattern as a unit, what that does and what that accomplishes for our students. So in a detracking model, all students receive the necessary connected foundational skills to continue mathematical education beyond high school. And I know I continue to beat this drum of mathematical learning past high school, but it is such an important piece and a predictor of future success. So all students have access to the highest recommended math courses during their 4th year of studies. And I think this is really important to pause and note that often when we talk about detracking, we have a fear of, if you make my students start at this point, or you have my students start at this point in mathematics, they'll never reach the goal that we've set for them to be accepted to the highest universities and colleges, or to be prepared to enter fields of study that they're interested in. And that would just not be a model that we would support, right? We want to ensure that the highest level of mathematics, that door is open for all students, that all students in their 4 years, or even shorter than their 4 years of high school, could achieve the highest mathematical classes, but continuing to hold true to that belief that they should start with the foundational skills first. And then all students have access to multiple math acceleration tracks depending on their future goals. And you're going to often, and I know that when I started this work, that I heard the word acceleration, and I was like, that's just another word for tracking. If we're accelerating, we're tracking. And I'll highlight what that means, that you can accelerate students, you can have students on a different math path than somebody else and still not have students who are tracked. That all doors remain open, which is the biggest difference, right? In tracking, I have told you that you are on this math path and you will never reach this end goal. There's no way for you to get there because you're on this track. And in acceleration, you can go this other, and I'm getting so excited, but you could go this other route, but all the doors remain open for you still.
Mrs. Batten, can I ask a question real fast on that side? So when you say Math 1, right, do you mean integrated Math 1, or is this a different course of study?
I do mean integrated Math 1. That's a great question, Hope. Thank you for calling that out. Yes, that we are looking at an integrated model.
I just find this fascinating just because you helped me a lot. As you know, I was debating whether or not to put Megan into IM1 or IM2. I'll share this publicly, why not, in the fall. And having had this discussion about what would the harm be about IM1 and why would we go to IM2, and our teachers were such a fabulous resource. Mrs. Gately was so helpful in that discussion as well. So hearing you talk about this just really rings true to something that I know both you and John have. It's not a new thought for either of you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. This is something that I know is a core belief.
Absolutely. And I will say as an educator that if I can share a quick story, 12 years ago and early in my career, I was teaching middle school math and encountered a student who was like no other math student I'd ever met before. This student could be given any equation, any new mathematical concept, and would pick it up like this. And as we looked at his high school trajectory, he was planning on going to Jesuit out of PS7 middle school. And we were like, well, let's accelerate him. Let's get him moving faster, right? So he skipped Algebra 1, went straight to geometry at that time. We were on a traditional model. This student did great, went all the way through high school, graduated AP Calculus last 2 years ago, and had grades that would make you think that choice back then was totally the right choice. I talked to his mom after graduation, and she said it was the biggest mistake we've ever made. He hates mathematics now. He doesn't want to be a doctor anymore. It was such a struggle for him, and he was just such an amazing student that he was able to grind his way through it because he wasn't going to accept any less from himself, but he didn't have the mathematical foundation because we made that leap up the rung early on. And of course, I have now beat myself up about it every day. I'm like, if I could only go back to that year. So I share that story to say that, yes, I'm in this place now, but I definitely had a different mindset as an educator 12 years ago, and it has been a path of growth, of experiencing failure in this world and seeing the power of this model. And so that's a great setup, Hope, for us, though. Thank you for sharing that story, because I talked last week specifically about the embedded honors program, and that while we were searching for a way to meet the needs of our most academically motivated students, we didn't want to build something out in isolation that wasn't real, that wasn't going to allow our students to achieve acceptance to college and universities. And so as we began to talk about this detracking model, we wanted to seek partners who have experience with this, who have had success with it. And so we first turned to San Francisco Unified School District, who detracked math in middle school and high school in 2013. So they began with their middle schools and rolled that up to their high school. I'm going to share some data with you from San Francisco Unified tonight, and I point this piece out just that they are on a traditional math pathway. So you'll see that they made that switch in 2013, where integrated math was still relatively new. And as we talked to the math professionals at San Francisco Unified, they're like, we were making a big change for our teachers. We weren't going to go detract and integrated at the same time. However, the other district that we've partnered with, Escondido Union High School District, also began the process of detracking in 2013, and they are integrated. And so they're a really powerful partner for us in that they have schools that are on a 4x4 model that began detracking at the beginning, at their conception, who started with a detrack model, both in middle school and in high school. And so, again, we will continue to partner with them, but it is just wonderful to walk alongside people who've had success with it, because we know this is new. In the world of mathematics as it's taught has been around since the 1800s. We've accelerated ourselves up this ladder as fast as we can, and so the idea of changing that or making an adjustment to it has some fear around it, and we want to make sure that we're guiding our families and students through that process. And so we think by having these partners, that will help our work. Okay, let's talk data because I love some numbers. So we saw in the D-tracking model in San Francisco Unified that we've seen a decrease in achievement disparities, and I'll show you some graphics of that piece. We've seen an increase in participation in upper level math classes, and this is the one I think is my favorite. That we know, again, Algebra 1, if you are on a traditional model, is you pass it and you're moving forward, and you fail it, and oftentimes you are now stuck in this cycle of never going anywhere. And so in San Francisco Unified, they saw a decrease of Algebra 1 repeat rates from 40% to 8%. And so while I call that out, that it doesn't align with the Math 1 that we'll be offering, that decrease of the repeat rate is just something that is a tremendous piece. And then 10% more students are taking courses beyond Algebra 2. So we know Algebra 2 is kind of that, you can stop here and you don't have to go any further, right? But if you do, again, doors are opening for you. And so encouraging all students to reach beyond Algebra 2 is something that San Francisco Unified has seen a tremendous growth in. And the next graph will show you that in an interesting way. So you'll see groups along the bottom, group of ethnicity along the bottom, and the number of math credits earned by the end of 11th grade, shown in 2017 with the blue column, and then class of 2018 is shown in the red. And so you'll see that all groups made growth, which I think is important, because often when we talk about detracking, we sometimes think, well, if we have to push up the students who are not being successful, is that going to harm the students up here who are high achieving and are being successful? And we know that with detracking, everyone is still successful, everyone still grows, and everyone still benefits. And so I want to call that out, because I don't want that to get lost in the, we're just trying to push up those students who struggle. No, we are looking at all students and continuing to make sure that pathways are open for all students. So the next slides after this one are going to show you some of our models, some of the models that we're working with. I put math classes on there just to have the conversation, but please know that these models are not the only models, right? These are just to kind of begin to build the picture. So when you look at our models, you'll look at integrated math pathways. We'll see multiple A through G approved pathways, remembering that our graduation requirements are that students are meeting those A through G course requirements. And so we have multiple ways for students to check that box, ring that bell. This is important, that classes are heterogeneous. And so this is something that, again, at the beginning of the work, before we partnered with San Francisco Unified, I don't think I would have thought about it in this way. But what that means is that if you are a student who is on potentially an accelerated path, and you are taking a Math 2 class or a Math 3 class in the spring as a sophomore, you would not necessarily be in a class with just sophomores. We're not going to create a sophomore pod of Math 2 students. That there would be juniors in that class as well. I used the wrong, Math 3, there would be juniors in that class as well. And so that you'd have a mixed group of abilities and a heterogeneous mix. And that does take intentional planning. It takes, careful master scheduling and things like that, but that would be a commitment that we would make. Hey, Aiden. Sorry, I just had to give a shout out to my buddy. And then this is so important. I think I referenced this through the conversation, that so often I think as we think about math, we think about it as this ladder, that I can skip rungs in the ladder and still get to the top. And when we think about that, then it makes sense to jump classes, right? But that math is truly, and I think my very cool graphic is on the next click, sorry. That math is truly a web, right? That these mathematical concepts, as we see them through integrated math, are all connected. And that if one is skipped, then you end up with a hole in the web that is irreparable. And that hole may not show up for the next year or the year after that, but at some point that hole is going to be there. And so we want to ensure that our students are getting their web secure and solid before they're jumping into those next higher level math classes. Okay, now the fun part. So here is a model that would take you over 4 years. It starts our freshmen in Math 1, transitions them to Math 2 the next year, and then we've got this dual pathway, and this is kind of where it gets exciting. So in that 4-year planning, if you were a student who was looking to enter an engineering program, then you're going to want to take the most advanced mathematical course offerings possible. So you would probably elect to take in your 3rd year that Math 3 with pre-calculus. However, if in your junior year you discover a love of English literature and decide to become an English major, and that college level math is not your jam, those three courses, those three final courses are still open. That Math 4 is, there's some conversation around that because Math 4 includes trigonometry, but so it would be like a senior math class, but you could still take statistics. College level calculus is still open to you for that college credit, as well as that Math 4 class. But if you were a student who in your 4-year planning had decided that stats was where you were wanting to land at the end of high school, then you would take that Math 3 with statistics, and you'd end up still having those options open. And I'll point out the dashed line here on the path from Math 3 to college level calculus. It's hard to show up on there. I should have, Ellen did, I apologize. But that is saying that that's not a clear pathway, right? That Math 3 with stats to college level calculus would not be the trajectory that most students would take. However, we will build a system that would allow students, should they decide after taking Math 3 that they have a love for mathematical practices and would like to enter college level calculus, then we can see them potentially getting that pre-calculus work through flex blocks in the fall, and then entering a college level calc class in the spring, which maybe doesn't sound like the best way to end your senior year, but each person has their own pathway. So, math people who love math. So that's an example of a 4-year model that would take you through a pretty traditional model. And again, I'll share those resources with you, but some of them, you'll see this reflected in the Escondido pathways. The next slide is going to show you Model 2. There's lots of arrows here, guys. So in Model 2, again, we're starting in that freshman year with Math 1. And then this is more of an accelerated model. So I would potentially in the fall semester take Math 2. And then I'm a student who has decided that I am going to finish with college level or with statistics. I would take Math 3 with statistics in the spring, and then statistics in my junior year. Now, I've now taken 4 classes, and the benefit of this that I want to call out is that because of our 4x4 model, I can double up those math classes, right? So I could take 2 math classes to allow for that accelerated path to math, and then potentially I still have that final year to explore a different math course, either through dual enrollment or on campus. And our final model is a similar model with just that Math 3 with calculus being open, and Math 3 with calculus being open, and that all 3 of those gateways are still open. And I don't know that I did a great job of pointing out that the how these models illustrate detracking is that at no point, no matter what pathway a student chooses, do any of those lines go away. Is there ever a point where a student's like, you chose this path, you can no longer access these classes? And that's where we get the detracking component of this model. I'm almost done, I promise. But if there's any burning questions, I'm happy to stop after the models to talk about those pieces. Okay, I'll keep jumping on. So what these pathways mean for students? I think as I was building this, or working with our partners to build this with Mrs. Sargent as well, I have students in my mind, right? I have 8th graders who I know have been highly successful in math, and I can hear them telling me in my head, I'm not taking Math 1, Mrs. Batten. I'm not starting in Math 1. And to them I say, that Math 1 class is going to build the foundation of your mathematical career. We had an amazing conversation with Mrs. Gately this week, where we kind of pitched this plan to her and showed her the models, and she was like, oh my goodness, the things we could do with that Math 1 class with our 8th graders who are coming out of Math 8, the rigor that we could build into that Math 1 class so they were able to do real world application of those mathematical concepts, the ability to ensure that they have every one of those practices solid and are able to apply it in multiple different ways, the ability to have deep conversations and increase the depth and complexity of that math class, both during the class period, but then we also know that those flex block times would be available. So if you're a student who is a high achieving math student who is going to do very well in Math 1, then we have the flex block period available, and I think we focused a lot on flex blocks for intervention, but there also is a chance for that deeper concept, that deeper application during flex blocks to get even more mathematical understanding to be prepared to take those more advanced math classes later on. We know that students who go through these pathways will be able to build a 4-year math pathway that is customized to their long-term goals, yet is also flexible should those goals change. I think that if we ever ask a 13 or 14-year-old to build themselves a 4-year math pathway in freshman year and then said you can't change that, and as you get older, all of us with teenagers in our lives realize that that is a foolish proposition. That there are definitely the students who have known since the age of 3 that they were going on this pathway and nothing is going to change, and this pathway allows for them to see their path towards that end goal. But we know that there's a good majority of students who are going to make those adjustments, and that those doors also remain open no matter where they choose to go each year. And I think for me, this is potentially the one I feel the most, I'll say red about, the most emotional about, that students are able to see a path to the most rigorous math course offerings, no matter what their perceived mathematical ability is. I think, as an educator, as a principal, I can't tell you the number of times I've sat across from a parent who's looked at their child and said, oh, she's not good at math because I'm not good at math. And you see in that child who has heard that year after year, this belief that I can't do math. And so if you start high school seeing that your school has chosen for you a pathway that does not allow you to access those courses, that feeling and belief is reinforced. And so sitting down with a student at the beginning of their freshman year to say, every door is open to you, and we are going to support you along the way to achieve whatever your end goal is. We are helping to reestablish that perception of what their mathematical ability is, both for our students who struggle with math, but then also for our mathematically advanced students who can see those acceleration pathways, who can see the ability to finish again by that third year, by junior year, and access some other math courses or other courses that may be of interest to them. So that's very exciting to us. And then I told you that I would share with you some resources. We've cultivated there's so many more. So if you read I think 6 articles that are listed there and want more, come back and I have more I'll provide. But we've included a bit.ly at the bottom of this slide. If you were to go to that bit.ly, there's links to several articles on detracking and the impact of detracking on all groups of students, as well as a link to the Escondido Unified or Union High School District's page and San Francisco Unified's page. I will tell you that if you want to go anywhere, San Francisco Unified's math page and the research they've done and the thoughtfulness that they've put into this work is really impressive, and it's been such a privilege to work alongside of them through this work. I think there's one more. Oh yes, our next step. So where are we going next? Where are we moving next? And I think this speaks to Jed's question on teacher professional development and ensuring that our teachers are prepared to execute this, because teaching in a detract model has implications for teaching practices. Joe Bowler, who's somebody we love in mathematics, has done an extensive amount of research on how to prepare and train teachers to teach in detract classrooms. We are going to be partnering with Escondido Unified High School District to develop a multi-year teacher professional development for our math teachers next year for our math teacher. So we're looking for partners for that person who can help provide them the professional development. We've partnered with Ellen Byron in the past, so you've heard her name as we've talked about some of the backwards design work we've done in our K-8. And she, with her position in Elk Grove Unified, has done some curricular investigations, and so she is partnering with us and sharing with us some curriculum that will support this work. And then incorporating our mathematical philosophy into the interview process, just as I spoke of, ensuring that the lenses of all of those skills and attributes are included in our interview process. Ensuring that we're onboarding teachers who believe that this is a way to teach students is going to be a really important part of our recruitment and hiring. And then once we have those teachers, we will use them to vet, and teachers on campus, as well as our new math teachers, vet curriculum to ensure alignment with the Westlake Charter High School math placement policy. So that is the end of math. I have one more section though, but I will pause as I hope. Go for it.
I raised my hand and everything. So it's okay if there isn't an answer to this yet. And I realize I'm currently living in a very different high school world. So I preface this question. So in my world, right, math placement as a freshman plays out not only in mathematics, but also in science courses and eligibility for chemistry in the sophomore year. And I'm just curious to see if there is also a detract plan for science potentially that would coordinate and allow for similar growth. Okay.
I'm so happy you asked that question, because I was talking to Leslie as we were building this. I'm like, should we bring science in? And she's like, You're already at 35 slides. You need to stop. So yes, there is a D-track plan for science. San Francisco Unified School District has ensured that science pathways are open as well. And so that would be something I definitely would present to the board in the near future. But thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, it's so interesting because she's in we have a heterogeneous math class, right? So it's really interesting to see the different classes ranging freshman to junior in this class. So that, it's really made for a really interesting resource. But you have to have these IM steps and then still have them tied into strange science steps. So I just really appreciate the work you've done here. I think it's much more straightforward for families to understand and really will help our students.
I hope so. That is definitely, like, simplifying it to make it clear is definitely the hope. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing other questions. I will press forward with I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this might be the most fun slide in the entire evening. So we'll see. So we are building a small high school with a big high school feel, and I'm just going to highlight some of those pieces tonight. So we are going to be participating in sports. Our CIF application is in the hands of the commissioner. I will be having a meeting with him shortly. Will be voted on in January, and we're excited to be offering cross country, volleyball, boys soccer, boys and girls basketball, boys volleyball, and girls soccer. And you'll notice that there's some different seasons. It's because we are in Division 7, so they do make some adjustments to seasons because of our division. But we're excited to offer sports. We will also have clubs. That work actually began last year. We surveyed our 6th and 7th grade middle school students and said, hey, what clubs would you like to see on campus? Dance, anime, gaming, Black Student Union, and academic clubs were at the top of the list, but that is a short list that we anticipate having become much longer. I've already begun working with advisory classes, so I've been going to every advisory class and having a call to action to join our high school spirit council, where a group of interested students will come together, and they are going to first be tasked with building or helping to start the design process for our Explorer mascots. Just do a dramatic pause there. I'm obviously the most excited person on that one, but and then also continuing to build our list of club offerings and ensuring that we have clubs that represent all students. And then activities like homecoming week. Sergeant and I were just talking today about St. Francis is actually homecoming week, because as we went to visit advisors, they're like, how can you have homecoming with no football? And I was like, oh, my friend, let me tell you about my homecoming experience where we had the best homecoming ever with no football team. I think it was probably better with no football team. Just saying. Just kidding.
Well, maybe happening in the spring this year.
There you go. Flexibility,
And it can happen any time because it's not tied to football.
There is a football team, though.
At St. Francis. There was not when I was there.
At Westlake Charter School in the spring.
True. Yes. So we will have homecoming. We are looking to partner with some other area charter schools to offer maybe a bigger dance community for our school dances. We'll have sports rallies as well as student government. So those offerings that we think of when we think of high school will be offered as part of our school. However, I'm going to end on this note. I have one more slide. Sorry. So if you see those activities and clubs and sports and your high school experience was enriched by them, then you get excited about having those be part of our high school. However, if for you those pieces were the parts that caused you to feel isolated and not be part of the school community, then those pieces may not cause as much excitement for you. And it's really crucial to us that we continue to live out our mission statement. We continue to demonstrate our belief in inclusion in these pieces as well. That is not just about the academics. So as we build these pieces, I put Westlake. I'm not sure that's how you spell it, but we're just going to go with it. Hopes. So we've already begun to ensure that our student voice is a part of the decision-making process, because I can sit in a room and build things, but it won't be representative of our students. We will ensure that we weave our core values into all areas. I was writing in the month of September our athletes' code of conduct, and it was so fun to weave the core values in really authentic ways, using their definitions into that code of conduct. And then we will work hard to define what inclusion means in all school culture pieces. So we will not just have clubs and activities and sports that are just there to be there because they build high school spirit. We're going to be very intentional with ensuring that every student feels seen and every student is heard and represented. And that's all I got. It's 9:35. Goodness gracious. Thank you all for staying with me. I appreciate it so much.
You can never have too many slides. I'm just going to say that. John can have too many slides, but you can't have too many slides. So I'll let anyone tell you, even if I do make faces about words, I love the presentation, and I appreciate it so much and the work you've put in on it. Were there board member questions for Mrs. Batten at this point? I'm sure. Yep, Josh.
This probably isn't the question you were looking for, Hope, but Emily, I've got to ask, or I'm not going to be able to make it alive from the breakfast table tomorrow.
Yeah.
What about uniforms?
Oh, there will not be uniforms at our high school. We will have a dress code, but no uniforms. But I don't know if I was supposed to publicly say that, recorded on YouTube yet. Oh. But there we go. Yes. It is out there. I think we said it. I think that we put it out there last year through some pieces. So yes. It was uniforms and vending machines that were shared out loud. So no uniforms, and we will have vending machines.
Can we just wear these cool basketball uniforms? Because those are slick looking.
Aren't those cool?
But I want to know where swimming is.
In the pool?
Right. Well, I'm half joking, Emily. Okay.
One of us has it.
Right? Jen, one of us. We're both doing it.
Well, and Josh too. Like this whole board is like a bunch of swammers.
Great. I'm looking for some coaches as soon as the aquatic center opens, and we can partner with them to offer swim team and water polo. So I know who to come tap now. Awesome.
Oh yeah, totally come to me. I'll hook you up with a coach.
Awesome.
I was going to say, also my friend who I'm trying to recruit to teach is a swimming and water polo coach.
Well, there we go. Even better. It's amazing. The coach conversation is phenomenal. Like we've had a great staffing conversation. The minute you started talking about sports, all these people come out of the woodwork like, I will coach girls soccer. So
it's such a weird world, like just from my own personal high school experience, right? Having my basketball coach also being my geometry teacher was not the best for my lifelong math skills, but I am sure we will do better than that. Positive, we'll do better than that. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. You're amazing, Mrs. Batten. Thank you so much for hanging out and sticking with us this late.
Thank you all. It was fun to be able to present that to you.
Thank you, Ms. Batten. Well done. That's it. I think we can all agree. There is much to look forward to in this high school. It is good. It is very exciting, the work that you're doing. Well done.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Globy out there in the middle of the basketball court.
Globy.
I'm joking, obviously. Please, no one tell their 8th graders about Globy. Just don't. Or Dora. I mean, we have jokes about it here. But thank you so much. Boy, John, it was the right call. We really lucked out, I think, on having goal setting in November.
I can't believe I was jokingly said, it's going to be a 3-hour meeting, and here we are, 3 hours. Sorry about the time management. Hope, we do have one public comment. I don't know if you wanted me to just read it in real quick.
Yes, please.
It is from Anna Thomas, and it says, what a thoughtful discussion about the reopening timeline gives us, and I'm sure other families, the confidence in the upcoming reopening plan. Curious about what percentage of parents will fill out the surveys related to distance learning. When we'll report that back. And I'll forward this to you now, Ms. Wells.
Thanks, John. So as you can tell from the agenda, we will do goal setting in November. This is just to make sure all the committees have a chance to work on their goals. And then, Michelle, once Impact works on their goals, I'll be in touch. They just wasn't ready for us to start our work yet. So then that brings any other future agenda items that board members would like to see at this point? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to reflection. Actually, I started celebrations with you, right?
You started celebrations with A-Dub.
A-Dub, so A, sorry, yes. So I'm going to go the other way. Vasa, if you would mind going first, and then Steve, if you want to participate.
There's a lot to celebrate about the meeting. I think, I knew starting a high school would be complicated, but the amount of details, we've obviously heard about the facilities and finance side from John quite a bit, and then the amount of details in curriculum and instruction and culture, it's a lot. So just kudos to all the people that are building a high school. It's amazing.
Steve Cormick.
So a shout out to Miss Gibbons on the phone. We hear a lot from Sac County Public Health, and to get your view on things is extremely helpful. So thank you for sharing those thoughts earlier tonight.
Yeah, Michelle, you definitely have a way of distilling the information in a way that's easily accessible that others maybe aren't as strong at. We'll go with that. Sean and then Shannon.
So I guess I'll do maybe a notice and wonder. So I notice, just as was just said, how much work there is going into the high school. So it reminds me of building a house, designing a house from scratch, and somebody that I know who did it, and they're like, now they want me to choose switch plates. I don't care, just put them in. It's so many decisions to make, and I wonder whether this is the case for all schools, or how much of it is much more sort of boilerplate, and you will get these switch plates, and we will put them in these places because this is how we always do it. So that's my notice and wonder.
Okay, Shannon and then Michelle.
Lots of things to reflect on, but I think I'll specifically talk about just the thoughtfulness I appreciate in especially the recruitment and the staffing. This is a thing I think about a lot in my own extremely not diverse workplace, and how hard it is to correct for that once you already have a full staff, and what an opportunity it is starting a new high school to be really thoughtful and intentional with our recruitment and how we're messaging who the school is, who we want to be, the types of educators and staff and people that we want to bring onto that. So I appreciate that thoughtfulness and the feedback to update graphics and to continue to make things more inclusive and diverse. So it's my reflection.
Thanks, Shannon. Michelle and then Josh.
Yeah, along that same line of thought, I would just say I appreciate the constant weaving in of equity and inclusion and diversity. I think it's safe to say in almost any discussion that we're having for the board, which is really just a reflection of where we want to see things continue to go. And it's great to see that a lot of these concepts were woven into the framework of the school in years past, and now we're just expanding on it, and we're really shining a light on it, seeing what it means, and reassessing and reevaluating and improving. And I think it's really great to see that we have a board that's cohesive in that thought and are willing to make changes and have some tough conversations as well. And so that's really encouraging.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Josh and then John.
I just want to thank Emily again for the high school presentation. I thought it was really, really good, particularly including some of the elements that the board had asked questions on. I thought it was a home run to bring that right back, and I thought it was a great presentation. I'm really, really excited. Home run.
Yeah, I was going to echo Michelle and I think Shannon's kind of comments in that if you look at tonight's presentations all the way through, whether we were talking about reflection, action, transformation in my presentation, to the reopening of schools and the equity issues there, to the high school where we talked about detracking and hiring diverse staff, the through line is starting to move through the lens that we all want it to move through. And I would definitely want to give a shout out to everyone on the screen today, because each person that speaks to each of these themes is seemingly more fluidly looking through that lens. And so it's not just leadership from the staff side, but leadership from the board side that's going to make this continually happen. So anyway, I just think I echo that when the themes are starting to overlap, it's starting to work.
Thanks, John. Jed, and then, I don't know, Emily, if you want to play since you're still on, you'll be after Jed.
I just liked the history lesson, and I liked Emily linking back the decisions about math tracking now to math tracking decisions that were made for the middle school. I'm a huge fan of Westlake, as all of you guys know. There have been a few things along the way I have, not been thrilled with, and the fact that we were tracking in middle school was one of them. And I was glad when we got rid of it then, and I'm really glad to see how that decision now ripples through in ways that really, I think, just postures us to be on the right side of equity as we jump into this new high school. So, really cool thing to see.
Thanks, Judd. Emily, and then Ashley.
I got to kind of listen off to the side before I jumped on, and I'm just going to celebrate John and the thoughtfulness of the work that he has led since March 13th. I mean, I've gotten to work with him in a very close capacity through this work, and he has led an organization and a community transparently through a very difficult time when many have misstepped. And he says it himself, like, we will make missteps, but because of the work that he has done, I think that we have laid just an amazing foundation in tonight, which is another example of that. So thank you, John, for all of that work.
Thanks, Emily. Ashley?
My reflections are just, I loved it last time, Emily, and just to hear more detail and more thorough planning, of course, on everything, but just all the insight and the detracking and the planning around it and the reasons why it's going to work, because we know it does and will and breeds amazing things, was awesome. During our discussion earlier as a board, I just had a reflection, like, I don't know how many recorded board meetings you see where everyone's like, yes, and. We aren't a board who's scared to say, let me push back on your idea, but we were all in the same place, it felt like, and I just, it's nice to come into a room and everybody's in the same place. We all were ready and prepared, which people say often, but we all kind of have the same mindset moving forward for what's best for our employees, our staff, our students, their families, and our own families. And that was my takeaway on that piece. My own little personal reflection is that this new blur effect is kind of amazing, because if you keep seeing me look back, I'm wrapping a compression on my son and doing his wound care because it's way past his bedtime and it needs to be done. And now I can see him, and it's great. He's like, really? They can't see me? So secretly he's here. He got a little closer. He's like, really? How are they seeing it? So anyways, I can be a mommy right now, which I really need to be for him. So I appreciate that too. Thanks, Google, for your new effects.
Well, and it is kind of, again, to that secret piece of multitasking that meeting from home is allowed for. I mean, we're all giving it our greatest attention, but to be able to sort of adapt and evolve is awesome. Amy?
So I was that kid that Emily was talking about in math. I am 52 years old, and it still makes me anxious and is making me a little emotional. So to know that she's giving that thought to kids coming up, that there won't be kids years from now at 52 still feeling like they can't do math because Emily is sitting there thinking about that kid and how that affects them for the rest of their life. Sorry, is just huge. And so again, I have my faith restored in what we do as a family for the kids coming up. So thanks, Emily, from one math nerd to a not math nerd at all. I appreciate what you're doing for our kids. Sorry, I guess it's a lot later than it should be.
I can't follow that, Amy Wells. I love you, but I can't follow that. But I'll bring humor. I'll go the humor route now.
Go the humor route, please.
So I have lamented to many people about how I cannot believe I missed high school by 1 year, right? This is not an unknown thing. But you sealed the deal tonight for me in the fact that my kiddo wanted uniforms. And so it would have been a very interesting conversation with her. And you know this, Emily, because we've talked about it. And in the end, what sealed the deal on her current high school was the fact they have a very strict uniform policy. And she really wanted that rule set. She needed that structure in her day. So that's my funny share, because I love my child, but I know that's probably a unique quality in a 14-year-old. So I will take it as long as I can. My more sentimental share is that what I appreciate the most, I think, about our board meetings is that, yes, we have strives to make in terms of diversity on our board. We do have a diversity of backgrounds and opinions, and we do always share those and bring different philosophies and experiences to the board, and we always take the time to listen to those ideas and trust the experts that we have. And that's not true in a lot of places, right? There's a lot of boards that spend a lot of time talking over each other and not trusting their valuable resources. And so to see this board time and time again relying on an admin, relying on Mrs. Batten to do the work and then present it to us and then ask the questions from our own cube of vision really means a lot to me. I just don't know. This is truly the only board I really see it on. And I work with a lot of boards. And so I just want to thank you all for always coming ready and open to share and stay online for 3 hours and 20 minutes on a Thursday night. But that, I just don't want to lose sight of that too, the amazingness that is us. John, would you mind taking one look at the email just to make sure we don't miss any public comments before we adjourn? Sorry to make this go on longer.
It's fine. There are no, just refreshing right now, no public comments, but while I'm refreshing, I would like to echo what you said, Hope. This is an incredible board. We've come a long way as a group, and I am proud of the work that we do together, and I'm honored to work alongside and for all of you. So yeah, thank you. Great, a great team, and Hope there are no further comments.
Perfect. So I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 9:51 and then not text Nancy tonight, but let her know I was supremely wrong about how long I thought this meeting was going to be. So she 100% made the right call to go celebrate her wonderful milestone with her husband, because I was an hour and a half off. So Kiki would have been quite irritated with me. So everyone have a lovely evening. Enjoy your weekend. And I'll see most of you next week because we have 3 committee meetings. So love you all.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.